Let go of me!
You will come with me.
The knife pressed cold against Varia's throat. She didn't scream. Screaming was for wolves who still had hope, and hope had died the night her pack burned. You have one choice, Omega. The rogue leader hissed, his breath reeking of blood and madness. Pledge yourself to me, or I slit your throat and move on to the next village. Varia's fingers trembled against the forest floor, dirt kicking beneath her nails. Around her, the smoking remains of Silver Pine settlement cast shadows that danced like ghosts. 12 families.
Gone.
All because she'd refused to become another monster's prize. Do it, she whispered. The blade bit deeper. Then, a howl split the night. Not the broken, desperate sound of rogues, but something ancient and commanding. Something that made even the killer at her back freeze. Silver eyes emerged from the darkness. A wolf the size of a small bear, black fur rippling with power that made the air itself vibrate. The Alpha King of the Northern Wastes. Kalen Thorne. And he was looking directly at her. The rogue's knife clattered to the ground as he shifted, bolting into the forest. Smart. But Varia couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Because the most dangerous wolf in 5 territories was stalking toward her, and she had absolutely nothing left to lose. He shifted mid-stride, a fluid, terrifying display of control. Stood before her naked and unbothered, all brutal muscle and cold authority. You told him to do it, Kalen said, his voice like gravel and winter storms. You told him to kill you. Yes. Why? Varia met those silver eyes, her own voice hollow. Because I'm tired of running. Something flickered across his face. Then he extended one hand. Run with me instead. Chapter 1. Varia had always known she would die young. Omegas in the borderlands didn't live long lives. They didn't grow old surrounded by grandchildren and pack warmth. They survived day to day, trading dignity for safety, hope for another sunrise. She'd made peace with it years ago. What she hadn't made peace with was dying before she'd mattered. Before she'd done something, anything, that proved her existence meant more than being prey for stronger wolves. But the Alpha King's hand, that changed things. I don't understand, Varia said, her voice cracking from smoke inhalation and exhaustion. Why would you want me to run with you? Kalen's expression remained unreadable. Behind him, warriors emerged from the tree line, his elite guard, 12 of the most lethal-looking wolves Varia had ever seen. They moved with perfect synchronization, checking the bodies of rogues, searching for survivors. There wouldn't be any. The rogues had been thorough. Because you're the 4th Omega settlement attacked this month, Kalen said, withdrawing his hand when she didn't take it. And the only survivor who didn't beg for mercy. I'm not brave. I'm just empty. Same thing sometimes. He grabbed a cloak from one of his warriors and tossed it to her. Cover yourself. We're taking you to Frostholm. Frostholm, the northern capital, the seat of the Alpha King's power. Varia wrapped the cloak around her shoulders with shaking hands.
Why?
To question me?
I don't know anything.
The rogues came at nightfall, killed anyone who fought back. Her voice broke. They took the children who survived. I heard them screaming as they... I know what they did. Kalen's voice turned to ice. I've been tracking this rogue pack for 6 weeks. They're not random raiders. Someone's organizing them, arming them, pointing them at Omega settlements specifically. His silver eyes locked onto hers. And I'm going to find out who. But I need leverage. Leverage. You. Varia's laugh was bitter. I'm an Omega who couldn't even protect her own settlement. What leverage could I possibly give you? Kalen stepped closer, and Varia's wolf stirred for the first time in hours, not with fear, but with something else entirely. Recognition? Impossible. The attacks follow a pattern, he said. Small settlements, no pack affiliation, all in disputed border territories. Someone's trying to destabilize the region, make it look like the Northern Wastes can't protect our own. His jaw clenched. The Southern Coalition is pushing for a vote to dissolve my authority over the borderlands. They claim I'm too ruthless, too focused on expanding territory instead of protecting the vulnerable. Understanding dawned slowly. You need to look like you care about Omegas. I need to prove I care about all my people. Omega, Beta, Alpha. It doesn't matter. An attack on one is an attack on all.
He paused.
But yes, optics matter. And an Omega survivor standing beside me at the Coalition Summit in 2 weeks sends a very specific message. Are you compassionate? Merciful? Varia's voice dripped with sarcasm. Everyone knows the stories about you. Kalen the Ruthless. The king who executed his own uncle for treason. Who burned 3 cities that refused to bend the knee. You're many things, your majesty, but compassion isn't one of them. Several warriors tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But Kalen smiled, a sharp, dangerous expression that did nothing to ease Varia's nerves. You're right. I'm not compassionate. But I am effective. And right now, I need someone who understands what these attacks mean. Someone who survived them. He tilted his head. In exchange, I offer you something you clearly don't have anymore. What's that? A reason to keep living. The words hit like a physical blow. Varia opened her mouth to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that she had plenty of reasons to. But she couldn't think of a single one. Her parents were dead. Killed in a territorial dispute when she was 16. Her settlement family, the ragtag collection of Omegas who'd taken her in. Ash and smoke behind her. The children she'd helped raise, taught to read, sang to sleep.
Gone.
I'm offering you a choice, Kalen continued, his voice gentler now. Almost kind. Come to Frostholm. Help me identify the pattern, find who's behind this. Stand beside me at the summit and show the coalition that the Northern Wastes protects all wolves, not just the powerful ones.
He paused.
Or stay here. Bury your dead. Wait for the next pack of rogues to finish what these ones started. It wasn't really a choice at all. What do I get out of this? Varia asked. Besides survival? Revenge. The word hung in the air between them, dark and promising. When we find who's orchestrating these attacks, Kalen said, you get to watch them burn. You get to look them in the eye and know that you helped destroy them. His silver eyes blazed. I'm offering you a purpose, Omega. The chance to make your pack's deaths mean something. Varia looked at the smoking ruins of Silverpine, at the bodies being wrapped by Kalen's warriors with surprising gentleness, at the blood-soaked earth that had been her home. Then she looked at the Alpha King, brutal, ruthless, offering her the only thing she wanted more than death. Justice. How long? She asked. 2 weeks until the summit. After that, he shrugged. Depends on how long it takes to find our enemy. And when it's over, when we've found them, destroyed them, what happens to me? You're free to go wherever you want. I'll provide gold, references, and safe passage to any territory in the 5 kingdoms. Kalen's expression remained neutral. Or you can stay in Frostholm, work in the palace, build a new life. As what? Your pet Omega? Proof that you're not the monster everyone says you are? As someone who matters. His voice was quiet but fierce. As someone who fought back when it would have been easier to die. Varia stood slowly, the cloak falling around her like a shroud. She was filthy, exhausted, hollow. But somewhere deep inside, something sparked to life. Anger. Purpose. The stubborn refusal to let the rogues win by destroying her spirit along with her home. Fine, she said. I'll come to Frostholm. I'll stand at your summit. I'll help you find these bastards. She stepped closer, tilting her chin up to meet his gaze directly. But when we find them, I don't just watch them burn. I will light the match. Kalen's smile turned genuine, still dangerous, but with a hint of respect underneath.
Deal.
He offered his hand again. This time Varia took it. His grip was warm, strong, and the moment their skin touched, something electric shot up her arm. Kalen's eyes widened fractionally, his nostrils flaring as he scented the air.
No.
Impossible. But Varia felt it too. The pull. The recognition. The sense that fate had just reached down and grabbed them both by the throat. Kalen released her hand quickly, his expression shuddering. We leave immediately. Can you ride? Or do you need? I can ride. Good. He turned to his warriors. Fenric, take points. Bastion, rear guard. We move fast and quiet. If those rogues regroup, I want us long gone before they find the spine to attack again. The warriors moved with practiced efficiency, pulling horses from where they'd been tethered beyond the tree line. Someone handed Varia a water skin, another offered food wrapped in cloth. Small kindnesses that made her throat tight with unexpected emotion. When has anyone shown her kindness without expecting something in return? Kalen mounted a massive black stallion with ease, then extended his hand down to her. You'll ride with me until we reach the first way station. I'm not risking you falling off from exhaustion. Varia wanted to argue. She wasn't helpless, wasn't some fragile thing that needed constant protection. But her legs were shaking, her vision swimming. Pride wouldn't keep her on a horse for a 6-hour ride. She took his hand and let him pull her up behind him.
Hold on, he said.
And don't fall off. I hate backtracking. Despite everything, the death, the destruction, the impossible situation she'd just agreed to, Varia almost smiled. She wrapped her arms around Kalen's waist, felt the solid strength of him, and held on tight as they rode into the darkness. Behind them, Silver Pine burned. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But for the first time in years, Varia felt something other than resignation. She felt alive, and she felt the ember of vengeance burning in her chest, small but growing stronger with every mile they traveled toward Frostholm. Someone had destroyed her world. Soon, she'd destroy theirs. The Alpha King had just given her the tools to do it. Chapter 2. The ride to Frostholm took 3 days. 3 days of sleeping on frozen ground, eating travel rations that tasted like sawdust, and trying to ignore the fact that every time Varia touched Kalen, mounting the horse, dismounting, accepting his hand over rough terrain, that electric pull grew stronger. He felt it too. She could tell by the way his jaw tightened, the way he pulled away faster each time, the way he avoided looking at her directly unless absolutely necessary. Neither of them mentioned it. On the second night, camped in a cave while sleet hammered the mountains outside, one of Kalen's warriors approached her. Fenric, the beta who'd been introduced as the King's second, all golden hair, an easy charm that did nothing to hide the lethal intelligence in his amber eyes. You're wondering why we haven't asked you questions, Fenric said, settling beside the fire across from where Varia sat wrapped in furs. I assumed the king would interrogate me when we reached Frostholm, Varia replied, watching flames dance across blackened wood. He doesn't need to. He already knows everything important.
How?
Fenric smiled. Because Kalen doesn't make moves without information. He knew about the Silverpine attack before we arrived. Knew how many rogues, knew their tactics, knew they'd leave one survivor to spread fear. He paused. What he didn't know was that the survivor would tell him to slit her throat. I wasn't trying to be brave. I know. That's what makes it interesting. Fenric leaned forward. The king doesn't save people, Varia.
He uses them.
And right now, he's using you to prove a point to the Southern Coalition. Don't mistake convenience for compassion. Varia met his gaze steadily. I'm not mistaking anything. We made a deal. I help him look merciful. He helps me get revenge. Everyone gets what they want. Do they? Fenric's expression turned thoughtful. Because from where I'm sitting, you just agreed to walk into a viper's nest of politics you don't understand, stand beside the most dangerous wolf in 5 territories, and paint a target on your back for anyone who wants to destabilize Kalen's rule. He tilted his head. What exactly do you get out of this besides a fancy dress and a death wish? Purpose. The word came out harder than Varia intended. Fenric raised an eyebrow, but didn't push further. Across the cave, Kalen stood watch at the entrance, his silhouette outlined by lightning. He hadn't slept since they'd left Silverpine. Just stood guard each night, silver eyes scanning the darkness for threats. He does that every night? Varia asked quietly. Every night since his father died, Fenric confirmed. King Aldrich was assassinated in his sleep 12 years ago. Kalen was 16. Found his father's body at dawn, throat slit, killer long gone. His voice dropped. He hasn't slept a full night since. Doesn't trust anyone else to keep watch. Varia's chest tightened with unexpected sympathy. That's how he became king so young. That's how he became the king he is now. Ruthless, paranoid, unwilling to show weakness. Fenric stood, brushing dirt from his pants. My advice? Keep your deal transactional. Don't mistake his protection for affection. And whatever you do, don't fall for him. I'm not. Everyone falls for him eventually. The power, the danger, the tragedy. It's intoxicating. Fenric's smile turned sad. But Kalen doesn't love Varia. He strategizes. And when you're no longer useful to his strategy, you'll be discarded like every other piece he's moved across the board. He walked away before Varia could respond, leaving her alone with thoughts that twisted like knives. She wasn't falling for Kalen. She barely knew him. The pull she felt was just biology. Proximity. Trauma bonding. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. They reached Frostholm at sunset on the third day. Varia had expected something brutal, a fortress of ice and stone, all sharp edges and cold functionality. What she found instead stole her breath. Frostholm rose from the mountainside like something from ancient tales. White stone towers that caught the dying light and blazed like captured stars. Bridges connecting spires, waterfalls frozen mid-cascade, courtyards where massive evergreens grew despite the altitude. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, just like its king. Home, Kalen said, the first word he'd spoken to her directly in 12 hours. What do you think? I think it's designed to make visitors feel small. His lips quirked. That's the idea. They rode through gates flanked by warriors who saluted Kalen with fists over hearts. Through courtyards where wolves stopped to stare at the Omega riding behind their king. Up winding paths to the palace proper, a structure that seemed carved from the mountain itself, all soaring halls and impossible architecture. Kalen dismounted in a private courtyard, then helped Varia down. The moment her feet touched stone, a woman appeared from the shadows. She was striking, tall, with dark skin and silver-streaked black hair pulled into intricate braids. She wore flowing robes in deep purple, and her eyes were the pale blue of glacial ice. Your Majesty, she said, her voice rich with barely concealed disapproval. You return with a guest. How unexpected. Calyx, Kalen replied coolly. This is Varia. She'll be staying in the East Wing. See that she has everything she needs, clothing, food, quarters appropriate for a guest of honor. Calyx's gaze swept over Varia with the thoroughness of a predator assessing prey. A guest of honor. I see. Her tone suggested she saw something quite different. And how long will this guest be honoring us with her presence? As long as necessary. How wonderfully specific. Calyx smiled, showing too many teeth. Come along, girl. Let's get you cleaned up before you track mud through the entire palace. Calyx, Kalen's voice dropped to a warning growl. Be nice. I'm always nice, Your Majesty. It's one of my most endearing qualities. She turned and walked away, clearly expecting Varia to follow. Varia glanced at Kalen, who nodded once. Go. Rest. Tomorrow we begin preparing for the summit. He hesitated, then added quietly, You're safe here. No one will harm you. Something in his tone made her believe him. Varia followed Calyx through corridors that seemed designed to confuse, up staircases that spiraled endlessly, past rooms that hummed with magic and purpose. Finally, they reached a set of carved doors that Calyx pushed open with one elegant hand. Your quarters, she announced. Varia stepped inside and stopped breathing. The suite was massive. A bedroom with a bed large enough for 5 people, piled with furs and silk. A sitting room with a fireplace already burning. A bathing chamber with a pool-sized tub steaming with hot water. Windows overlooking the mountains, where stars were beginning to emerge like diamonds on velvet. This is too much, Varia whispered. The king's orders. Calyx moved to a wardrobe and began pulling out dresses in various fabrics and colors. You'll need appropriate clothing for court. These should fit well enough until the seamstresses can measure you properly. Who are you exactly? Calyx Moonwhisper. The king's chief advisor, head of intelligence, and occasional voice of reason when he's being particularly stubborn. She turned, those glacial eyes assessing. I'm also the person who will tell you the truth when everyone else is too afraid. What truth? Calyx set down the dresses and faced Varia fully. That you're in danger. Not from Kalen, he's many things, but he honors his word. The danger comes from everyone else. She began counting on her fingers. The Southern Coalition wants the borderlands and will do anything to weaken Kalen's claim. The Northern houses resent an Omega being given guest of honor status. The rogues who destroyed your settlement are still out there, and they'll want to finish the job. And then there's the faction within Frostholm itself that believes Kalen has grown too soft, too focused on diplomacy instead of conquest. Varia's head spun. You're saying I'm a target. I'm saying you're a symbol. And symbols either become monuments or warnings, depending on who's holding the chisel. Calyx's expression softened slightly. Kalen brought you here for political reasons, but he'll protect you. The question is whether you're prepared to play the role he needs you to play. What role is that? The grateful Omega. The survivor he rescued. The proof that the ruthless Alpha King has a heart. Calyx smiled without humor. It's all theater, girl. And you just walked onto the stage. Varia sank into a chair, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not enough? Then you'll fail, and Kalen will lose the borderlands, and the rogues will keep destroying settlements until there are no Omegas left in the disputed territories. Calyx's voice turned gentle. But I don't think you'll fail. Why not? Because you told an Alpha King to go ahead and kill you rather than beg for mercy. That takes a particular kind of strength. She moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Bath's hot. Food will arrive shortly. Sleep as long as you need. Tomorrow, we begin your transformation. Into what? Calyx's smile turned mysterious. Into exactly what Kalen needs you to be. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Varia alone in luxury she'd never imagined, with a future she couldn't predict and a purpose that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. She stripped off her filthy clothes and sank into the bath. The hot water stung scratches she'd forgotten she had, soothed muscles knotted from 3 days of riding. Varia dunked her head under the surface and screamed. Screamed for Silverpine. For the children she couldn't save. For the life she'd lost and the impossible one she'd gained. When she surfaced, gasping, tears streamed down her face, mixing with bathwater. She cried until she was empty. Then she washed the ash from her hair, the blood from beneath her nails, the smell of smoke from her skin. When she emerged, she wrapped herself in a robe softer than clouds and ate the food that had appeared while she bathed. Roasted meat, fresh bread, fruits she'd only seen in markets. Finally, she collapsed into the massive bed and fell into sleep, so deep it felt like drowning. She dreamed of silver eyes and burning villages, of revenge and impossible choices, of a hand extended in darkness and the terrifying decision to take it. Somewhere in the palace, Kalen stood at his window watching the same stars, feeling the same pull, and wondering what fate had sent him an Omega who made him feel things he'd sworn never to feel again. Neither of them knew that their deal, simple, transactional, temporary, was about to become far more complicated than either could imagine. Because destiny didn't care about plans. And the bond forming between them didn't care about politics, revenge, or carefully constructed walls around damaged hearts. It only cared about one thing, bringing two broken souls together and forging them into something unbreakable, whether they wanted it or not. Chapter 3. Varia woke to someone shaking her shoulder.
Up. Now.
We have 4 hours before you're presented to the court, and you look like you've been dragged behind a horse. Varia blinked briefly at Calyx, who stood beside the bed holding a cup of something that smelled aggressively herbal. Sunlight streamed through the windows, late morning sun, judging by the angle. How long did I sleep? Varia croaked. 16 hours. The king wanted to let you rest longer, but the northern houses are already circling like sharks. They know he brought someone back from the borderlands, and rumors are spreading faster than wildfire. Calyx thrust the cup at her. Drink this. It'll help with the fatigue. Varia drank. The liquid tasted like pine needles and regret, but warmth spread through her chest almost immediately, clearing the fog from her mind. What kind of rumors? The usual. That you're his mistress. That you're a spy from the Southern Coalition. That he's finally lost his mind and started collecting strays. Calyx moved to the wardrobe, pulling out dresses with ruthless efficiency. We need to control the narrative before it controls us. Which means you need to look like someone worth the king's attention. I'm not his. I know what you are and aren't, but they don't. And perception is everything in court. Calyx held up a dress in deep forest green. This one. It'll complement your coloring and send the right message. What message is that? That you're not some frightened Omega who stumbled into power. You're a survivor who earned her place here. Calyx's expression softened fractionally. The court will try to break you, Varia. They'll smile while they slip knives between your ribs. Your only defense is to be unbreakable. Over the next 3 hours, Varia was scrubbed, buffed, dressed, and transformed by a team of attendants who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Her hair was washed with oils that made it shine like honey, then braided in a style that was both elegant and practical. The green dress fit perfectly, hugging curves she'd forgotten she had, with sleeves that concealed the scars on her arms. When they finally let her look in the mirror, Varia didn't recognize herself. The hollow-eyed, ash-covered survivor was gone. In her place stood someone who looked almost regal. Still small, still obviously Omega, but carrying herself with a dignity she hadn't known she possessed. Better, Calyx said approvingly. Now for the hard part. This wasn't the hard part. This was making you look the part. Now we teach you how to play it. Calyx gestured to the sitting room, where breakfast had been laid out. Eat while I explain how the court works. Varia sat and forced herself to eat slowly, though her stomach growled with hunger. Calyx paced, her words sharp and precise. The northern houses are the 12 most powerful packs in Kalen's territory. Each is led by an alpha with their own ambitions, alliances, and grievances. They serve Kalen because he's stronger than any of them individually, but together, she paused meaningfully. Together they could be a problem. They want him gone? Some do. Others just want him weakened enough that they can expand their own power. The Borderlands dispute gives them an opportunity. Calyx stopped pacing, fixing Varia with those glacial eyes. If Kalen loses control of the disputed territories to the Southern Coalition, it proves he's not strong enough to hold his kingdom together. The houses will smell blood and move against him. So me standing beside him at the summit shows strength. Shows he protects all his wolves, not just the powerful ones. Shows he's not the monster his enemies paint him as. Calyx leaned forward. But only if you can survive the court long enough to make it to the summit. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of Calyx's attendants entered, bowing quickly. The king requests Lady Varia's presence in the throne room. The northern houses have assembled. Varia's stomach dropped.
Now.
Now, Calyx confirmed. She smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from Varia's dress. Remember, chin up, spine straight, no apologies. You belong here because the king says you belong here. Anyone who questions that is questioning him. That's not exactly comforting. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to keep you alive. Calyx offered her arm.
Come.
Let's introduce you to the Vipers. The throne room was designed to intimidate. Massive columns carved with scenes of ancient battles. Floors of black marble shot through with silver veins. Windows that stretched 3 stories high, flooding the space with cold mountain light. And at the far end, elevated on a dais of white stone, sat Kalen. He wore black and silver, his formal regalia, Varia realized, and a crown of twisted metal that looked more like a weapon than decoration. His silver eyes tracked her entrance with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Around the room, arranged in a semicircle, stood the northern houses. 12 alphas, each radiating power and barely concealed hostility. Warriors flanked them, honor guards who watched Varia like she might spontaneously combust. Varia forced herself to walk steadily, using every lesson Calyx had drilled into her. Spine straight. Chin up. No fear. She stopped at the base of the dais and bowed. Not a subservient Omega bow, but the respectful acknowledgement of one leader to another. Your Majesty, she said clearly. Kalen's lips quirked. Lady Varia, welcome. He stood, descending the steps to stand beside her. The gesture was deliberate, placing them at the same level, showing unity. Northern houses, I present Varia of Silverpine, survivor of the rogue attacks that have plagued our borderlands. She stands as witness to the violence being orchestrated against our people. Silence. Then a voice cut through the tension like a blade. A survivor. How, convenient. Varia turned to see a woman stepping forward. She was beautiful in a predatory way, sharp features, ice blonde hair, eyes like frozen lakes. She wore silver and white, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Alpha Iskira of House Winterfong, Calyx whispered. Be careful. She's vicious. Convenient indeed, Iskira continued, her smile cold. The king finds one Omega alive among the ruins, brings her to court, and expects us to believe this isn't simply theater to sway the coalition summit. Are you suggesting I orchestrated the attack on Silverpine? Kalen's voice dropped to dangerous levels. I'm suggesting that timing is fascinating. You need proof of your dedication to protecting Omegas. An Omega settlement is conveniently destroyed. One survivor remains. Iskira's gaze swept over Varia with open contempt. Forgive my skepticism, Your Majesty, but it feels rehearsed. Rage flooded through Varia, hot and clarifying. You think this is theater? I think. 12 families burned alive. Children torn from their mother's arms. Elders butchered in their homes. Varia's voice shook, but not with fear. With fury. If this is the theater, Alpha Iskira, then the blood on my hands from trying to dig survivors out of collapsed buildings must be excellent makeup. Gasps rippled through the assembled alphas. Speaking to a house leader with such open anger was practically suicide for an Omega. But Varia was done with silence. You want to know if it's convenient?
Fine.
It's convenient that I survived when everyone I loved died. It's convenient that your king found me before the rogues returned to finish the job. It's convenient that I'm standing here instead of being another corpse in the borderlands. She took a step toward Iskira. But convenience doesn't make it any less real. And your skepticism doesn't bring back the dead. The throne room fell silent. Kalen stood utterly still, his expression unreadable. But Varia caught the faintest gleam of approval in his silver eyes. Iskira's perfect features are twisted with anger. How dare you speak to me with such honesty? Another voice, male, deep, amused. A different alpha stepped forward, this one older with gray threading his dark hair. Let her speak, Iskira. I find her refreshing. Alpha Silas of House Stormcrest, Calyx murmured. Silas smiled at Varia. Tell me, girl, what did you see? Describe the rogues who attacked your settlement. This was a test. Varia knew it instinctively. If she faltered, showed ignorance, they dismiss her as Kalen's pawn. 15 of them, she said clearly. Mixed pack, some bore marks from the eastern wastes, others from southern territories. They moved with military precision, not the chaos of typical rogue attacks. Someone trained them. She closed her eyes, forcing herself to remember. Their leader had a scar across his throat, partial vocal damage. He gave orders in hand signals more than words. They were looking for something specific. What makes you say that? Silas pressed. Because they ransacked the elder's home first. Tore through documents, searching. Only after they didn't find whatever they wanted did they start the killing. Varia opened her eyes. These weren't random raiders. They had a purpose. Murmurs spread through the room. Kalen remained silent, letting her speak. What were they looking for? Another alpha asked. I don't know. But they kept asking about trade routes, about who we'd sold goods to, about shipments to Frostholm. Varia looked at Kalen. They were gathering intelligence. On my supply lines, Kalen said quietly. They were mapping vulnerabilities. Which means someone is planning something bigger than random attacks, Silas concluded. His expression turned grim. The Southern Coalition? Possibly. Or someone closer to home. Kalen's gaze swept the room, and several alphas shifted uncomfortably. Which is why Lady Varia will remain under my personal protection until we identify the threat. Anyone who wishes to question her further will do so in my presence. Your personal protection? Iskira's laugh was sharp. Is that what we're calling it now? Careful, Iskira. Kalen's voice turned to ice. That sounds dangerously close to questioning my honor. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Iskira's smile faltered, but she didn't back down. I question your judgment, your majesty, not your honor. She gestured at Varia. You bring an Omega to court, give her guest of honor status, and plan to parade her before the coalition. But what happens when they ask why you care so much about one survivor when hundreds have died? What answer will satisfy them? It was a fair question. One Varia had wondered about herself. Kalen descended the final step, moving to stand directly beside Varia, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, smell cedar and winter frost. I'll tell them the truth, he said, that every life in my territory matters. Omega, Beta, Alpha, there is no hierarchy when it comes to basic protection and dignity. His silver eyes blazed. And I'll tell them that anyone who harms my people will face the full weight of my wrath. No exceptions. The words resonated through the throne room like a promise and a threat. Now, Kalen continued, his voice returning to normal levels. Are there any other questions? Or can we move on to the actual business of governing instead of debating whether my guest is real enough for your satisfaction? No one spoke. Excellent. This assembly is dismissed. House leaders, we reconvene tomorrow to discuss security protocols for the summit. He turned to Varia, offering his arm. Lady Varia, walk with me. Varia took his arm, acutely aware of every eye tracking their exit. They walked through corridors in silence until they reached a private garden, a courtyard filled with winter roses that somehow bloomed despite the cold. The moment they were alone, Kalen released her arm and ran a hand through his hair, disturbing the crown's perfect placement. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, he said. Probably both. Definitely both. But he was smiling. Iskira has been a thorn in my side for years. Watching you verbally dismantle her was satisfying. I shouldn't have lost my temper. You should have. It made you real to them. Kalen faced her fully. Iskira was right about one thing. They'll question why I care about one Omega survivor. We need a better answer than political expedience. What answer do you want to give? Kalen was quiet for a long moment, those silver eyes searching hers. The truth, he said finally, that when I found you in those ruins, telling that rogue to kill you instead of begging, something shifted. You reminded me why I fight. Not for power or territory, but because there are wolves worth protecting. Wolves with courage most alphas will never have. Varia's breath caught. That sounds dangerously close to admiration, Your Majesty. It is admiration. He stepped closer. You stood in front of the northern houses and didn't flinch. You challenged Iskira knowing she could destroy you with one word to the right people. That's not a weakness, Varia. That's the strength these alphas have forgotten exists. The pull between them intensified, that strange, electric connection that made Varia's wolf whine with recognition. Kalen, she whispered. What's happening? This feeling when we... I know. His jaw clenched. I feel it too. Is it? Don't. His voice turned harsh. Don't say it. Don't even think about it. Why not? Because if you say it out loud, it becomes real. And I can't. He turned away, shoulders rigid. I can't afford that kind of weakness.
Not now.
Not with everything at stake. Hurt lanced through Varia's chest. So what do? Ignore it. We focus on the summit. On finding who's behind the attacks. On the deal we made. Kalen's voice was carefully controlled. Nothing more. And after? When will this be over? He didn't answer. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Varia nodded.
Fine.
Just business. I can do that. Good. But as Kaelin walked away, leaving her alone in the garden with winter roses that refused to die despite the cold, Varia knew it was a lie. They were both lying. Because fate didn't care about their plans, their fears, or their carefully constructed walls. And the bond forming between them was already too strong to ignore, no matter how hard they tried. Chapter 4. The attack came 3 nights later. Varia awoke to the sound of shattering glass and the acrid smell of smoke. For one disorienting moment, she was back in Silverpine, watching her world burn. Then training kicked in, the survival instincts honed by years of living on the edge of disaster. She rolled out of bed, grabbing the closest weapon she could find. A letter opener from the desk. Pathetic, but better than nothing. The door to her chambers burst open. Varia raised the letter opener, ready to go down fighting. It's me. Kaelin's voice cut through her panic. He was dressed for battle, leather armor, twin blades strapped to his back, blood already spattering his face. We need to move. Now. What's happening? Rogues. Inside the palace. His silver eyes blazed with fury. Someone let them in. A traitor. Inside Frostholm itself. Kaelin grabbed her hand, pulling her into the corridor. Chaos reigned, warriors running, steel clashing, screams echoing off stone walls. The palace was under siege from within. How many? Varia asked, struggling to keep pace as Kaelin dragged her through passages she didn't recognize. At least 30, maybe more. He pulled her around a corner, narrowly avoiding a group of rogues tearing through a tapestry. They're targeting the East Wing. They're targeting you. Ice flooded Varia's veins. Me? Why? Because whoever orchestrated this knows you're the key to the summit. Kill you and I lose my evidence. My proof that the borderlands need protection. Kaelin's jaw clenched. I won't let that happen. They burst into a stairwell, descending into darkness. Kaelin moved with absolute certainty, navigating without light. Varia stumbled, and his arm wrapped around her waist, steadying her. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't find you. He kicked open a door at the bottom of the stairs, revealing a tunnel carved from raw stone. The escape routes. My father built them after the assassination attempt started. They ran through the tunnel, Varia's lungs burning, her bare feet bleeding on rough stone. Behind them, shouts echoed. The rogues had found the stairwell. Faster, Kaelin urged. The tunnel branched. Kaelin chose left without hesitation, pulling her deeper into the mountain. The sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by dripping water and their ragged breathing. Finally, Kaelin stopped in a small chamber lit by a single torch. He released her hand, moving to a hidden alcove where weapons were stashed. Here. He tossed her a proper dagger. You know how to use this? Point the sharp end at things I want to stop moving? Despite everything, he almost smiled. Close enough. He armed himself with brutal efficiency, daggers and boots, a short sword at his hip, something that looked suspiciously like poison vials tucked into his belt. Kaelin. Varia's voice shook. If they're inside the palace, if someone betrayed you, I know. His expression turned grim. One of the northern houses is working with the rogues. Or the Southern Coalition. Or both. He met her eyes. Which means I can't trust anyone except my inner circle. Do I count as an inner circle? You're the only person I'm certain isn't a traitor. You have the most to lose if I fall. He paused. That, and I don't think you're capable of that kind of duplicity. You're too honest. It's refreshing and terrifying in equal measure. A crash echoed from the tunnel entrance. The rogues were getting closer. We can't stay here, Varia said. I know. But I need to get you somewhere truly safe before I go back up there. Kaelin moved to another section of wall, pressing something Varia couldn't see. A door swung open, revealing a passage that sloped downward. This leads to the lower levels. Storage chambers, old dungeons, areas that haven't been used in decades. You'll hide there until...
No.
Kaelin turned, surprise flickering across his face. No. I'm not hiding while you fight. Varia gripped the dagger he'd given her. You brought me here to help you.
To stand beside you at the summit.
Well, I can't do that if I'm cowering in some forgotten dungeon while rogues tear through your palace. Varia, this isn't. Isn't that? Isn't it my fight? Anger bubbled up, hot and righteous. They destroyed my home, killed my family, and now they're here, trying to kill me and everyone under your protection. She stepped closer. I told you I wanted to light the match when we found them. Well, they just walked into your house. So, give me a torch. Kalen stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Respect.
Concern.
And something else, something that made the air between them crackle with tension. You'll do exactly what I say, he said finally. Stay behind me. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. And if I tell you to run, I won't. Varia. I won't run. Not anymore. She met his gaze steadily. I'm done being prey, Kalen. Teach me to be a hunter. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then he pulled another blade from the alcove, a long knife with a wicked curve. This is better for close combat. Aim for soft tissue, throat, under the ribs, inner thigh where the major artery runs. His voice dropped into instructor mode, calm and clinical. Don't try to overpower them. You're smaller, faster. Use that. Strike and move. Never stay in one place. Varia took the blade, testing its weight. It felt right in her hand. Natural. One more thing, Kalen said. He reached up, unclasping something from around his neck. A pendant, silver wolf's head on a leather cord. Wear this. Anyone loyal to me will recognize it and protect you. Kalen, I can't. Yes, you can. He fastened it around her neck, his fingers brushing her skin and sending shivers down her spine. And you will. Because if anything happens to me, you'll need proof that you're under my protection. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Varia's hand covered his where it still rested against her collarbone. Because I won't let it. Something cracked in Kalen's carefully controlled expression. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers, an intimate gesture that made her heart stutter. You're going to get yourself killed trying to protect me, he whispered. Probably. But at least I'll die doing something that matters. Varia. A howl echoed through the tunnels, close now. Too close. Kalen pulled back, drawing his sword. Stay close. Move quietly. And remember, throat, ribs, thigh. Throat, ribs, thigh, Varia repeated. They moved back into the tunnel, this time as hunters instead of prey. The first rogue appeared around a bend, his eyes wild with bloodlust. He saw Kalen and charged with a roar. Kalen moved like water, fluid, unstoppable. His blade caught the rogue across the throat before the creature could even swing. The body dropped, and Kalen was already moving, pulling Varia past the corpse. Don't look, he said. Keep moving. But Varia had already seen death. One more body didn't shock her. They navigated the tunnels with Kalen's preternatural knowledge of the layout, avoiding 2 more groups of rogues. But eventually, their luck ran out. 5 rogues blocked the passage ahead. Behind them, more approached, drawn by the scent of blood and the sound of fighting above. Trapped, one rogue laughed. His voice was rough, damaged. Varia recognized him, the scar-throated leader from Silverpine. You, she breathed. He grinned, showing broken teeth. The little Omega who watched her pack burn. I told my employers we should have killed you when we had the chance. But they wanted you alive, wanted you scared. His grin widened. Now, we just want you dead. Your employers, Kalen said coldly. Who are they? Like I'd tell the dead king anything. The rogue gestured, and his pack began to circle. Kill him. Bring me the girl. Kalen's sword flashed. Behind me, he told Varia. No. She raised her blades, settling into a stance that felt instinctive. Beside you. 2 rogues lunged simultaneously. Kalen took one, his blade singing through the air. Varia reacted on pure instinct, ducking under grasping claws, driving her curved knife up under the second rogue's ribs exactly where Kaelin had told her. Hot blood spilled over her hands. The rogue's eyes widened in shock, then went vacant. Varia yanked her blade free, her stomach churning but her hands steady. Good, Kaelin said, dispatching his opponent. Again. The remaining three attacked together, trying to overwhelm them with numbers. But Kaelin fought with the skill of someone who'd been trained since childhood, and Varia fought with the desperation of someone who had nothing left to lose. She was smaller, faster, just like Kaelin said. She slipped under defenses, struck vital points, and moved before retaliation could land. Her world narrowed to motion and survival. Duck, strike, move, breathe. When it was over, 5 bodies lay in the tunnel. Varia stood covered in blood that wasn't hers, breathing hard, alive. You're a natural, Kaelin said, wiping his blade clean. There was approval in his voice, and something that might have been concerning. Where did you learn to move like that? I didn't. I just reacted. Instinct. He studied her with new intensity. Most Omegas freeze in combat. You adapted. Most Omegas haven't had their entire world destroyed twice. Various hands started shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. I can't afford to freeze. Kaelin caught her hands, steadying them with his own. You did well. Better than well. His thumbs brushed over her knuckles, gentle despite the violence surrounding them. But we need to keep moving. More will come. Kaelin. Varia's voice dropped. That rogue said his employers wanted me alive at first. That means someone's planning something bigger than just killing you. They wanted you frightened, broken, useful somehow. His expression darkened. And when you became inconvenient, they changed tactics. But who? The Southern Coalition? One of your northern houses? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. He released her hands, though she saw reluctance in the gesture. Come on. The main hall should be secured by now. We need to regroup with Fenric and... An explosion rocked the tunnel. Dust and debris rained down, and the passage ahead collapsed with a roar of falling stone. When the dust cleared, they were trapped, completely cut off from the palace above. Alternative exit? Varia coughed. Kaelin examined the collapse, his expression grim. There's another route, but it takes us deeper into the mountain. Through the old sections. The sections that haven't been used in decades? Yes. That sounds ominous. It is. He turned to face her fully. Varia, I need you to understand something. If we go deeper, we might not find a way back up for hours. Maybe days. We'll be completely isolated. As opposed to being buried alive here? Fair point. He retrieved the torch from where it had fallen. Stay close. And whatever you see down there, don't react. The old dungeons, they're not pleasant. I've seen plenty of unpleasant things lately. Not like this. They descended into darkness, leaving the sound of battle far above. The tunnel grew colder, damper, and older. Varia saw what Kaelin meant. Cells carved into stone, chains still hanging from walls, stains that could only be old blood. This was where Kaelin's ancestors had kept their enemies. Their prisoners. Their victims. My father wanted to seal these sections, Kaelin said quietly, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. But the council convinced him to keep them accessible. For emergencies, they said. His laugh was bitter. Now I'm beginning to think some of them wanted these routes available for exactly this kind of betrayal. How deep do they go? All the way to the mountain's base. There's an exit into the forest, hidden and warded. If we can reach it. A sound stopped him. Not behind them, but ahead. Movement in the darkness beyond the torch's reach. Kaelin raised his sword. Show yourself. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Varia's breath caught. It was a woman, or had been once. Now she was something else. Scarred, feral, with eyes that reflected the torchlight like an animal's. She wore rags that might have been a dress decades ago. Lost ones, the woman whispered, her voice like grinding stone. Lost in the deep places. Lost like me. Who are you? Kaelin demanded. The woman's laugh was broken glass. I was Lisette. House Moon Whisper. Before the old king locked me here for loving the wrong wolf. Her eyes focused on Kaelin. You have his face. Aldrich's face. Come to finish what he started. Kaelin lowered his sword slightly. My father imprisoned you? Murdered my mate. Said our bond threatened the alliance with House Winterfang. Give me a choice, renounce him or rot. Lisette's smile was terrible. I chose rot. That was 30 years ago. Horror washed over Varia. You've been down here for 30 years? Time moves differently in deep places. Could be 30 years. Could be 300. Lisette tilted her head, studying them with unsettling intensity. But you're not here to free me. You're here to escape, running from wolves who bite. The palace is under attack, Kaelin said carefully. We need to reach the forest exit. There's always an exit. The question is, what are you willing to pay for it? Lisette's gaze shifted to Varia, to the pendant around her neck. The king's mark. On an omega. How interesting. How familiar. What do you want? Varia asked. Truth. Lisette stepped closer. When you reach the surface, when you face the wolves who bite, remember this. The betrayal comes from inside. Always inside. The ones who smile are the ones who sharpen their knives. That's not exactly helpful, Kaelin said. Truth rarely is. Lisette pointed down a branching tunnel. That way. Follow the bones. They'll lead you out. And King. She looked at Kaelin. Your father was a monster. Try not to become him. Then she faded back into the darkness, leaving them alone with her cryptic warning. Follow the bones. Varia whispered. That's disturbing. I know. Kaelin moved toward the tunnel Lisette had indicated. But we don't have many options. They followed the passage deeper, and true to Lisette's word, bones marked the path. Old bones, scattered along the floor like grim signposts. Evidence of prisoners who'd tried to escape and failed. Or prisoners who'd been left to die. Kaelin, Varia said quietly, your father really did this? Imprison someone for 30 years because of who they loved? I don't know. Maybe. His voice was tight. My father did many things I didn't know about. I'm still discovering his secrets. And if you become king, if you already are king, will you make the same choices? He stopped walking, turning to face her in the flickering torchlight. Is that what you think? That I'd imprison someone for loving? I don't know what I think anymore. A week ago, I thought all alphas were monsters. Now I'm following one through a dungeon full of bones, trusting him with my life. Varia met his gaze. So, tell me, what kind of king are you, Kaelin Thorne? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. The kind trying not to repeat my father's mistakes, Kaelin said finally. The kind who wants to believe there's another way. A better way. He reached out, his hand cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. The kind who thinks maybe, just maybe, some bonds are worth protecting instead of destroying. Varia's heart stuttered. Kaelin. I know what's happening between us. I've known since the moment I found you in those ruins. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. And it terrifies me. Because the last person who formed a true bond against political convenience ended up imprisoned in these dungeons for 30 years. I'm not asking for. I know what you're not asking for. But I'm starting to think fate doesn't care what we ask for. He pulled away, the moment breaking. Come on. We need to keep moving. They walked in silence, following the bones deeper into the mountain's heart. And with each step, Varia felt the bond between them growing stronger, more impossible to ignore. Above them, the battle raged. Behind them, a woman rotted in darkness for the crime of loving. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But right now, at this moment, Varia made a decision. Whatever happened, whoever was behind the attacks, she wouldn't let fear dictate her choices anymore. She'd faced death twice and survived. She'd fought rogues and won. She'd stood before the northern houses and didn't break. And if fate was pushing her toward Kaelin Thorne, then maybe, just maybe, she'd stop fighting it and see where that path led. Even if it led straight into danger. Even if it costs everything. Because some things she was beginning to understand. were worth the risk. Chapter 5. The forest exit was exactly where Lisette said it would be. A narrow opening concealed behind a waterfall, warded with magic that made Varia's skin prickle as they passed through. They emerged into pre-dawn darkness, the forest around Frostholm still and silent. Behind them, the mountain loomed, and somewhere within it, the battle continued. "We need to circle back," Kaelin said, already moving. "Fenric will be." A figure dropped from the trees, blade raised. Kaelin's sword met it with a clash of steel that echoed through the forest. "Stand down," Fenric's voice. The beta lowered his weapon, relief flooding his features. "Thank the gods. We thought you were dead." "Status," Kaelin demanded. "Rogues are cleared from the palace. 23 dead, including 8 of our warriors." Fenric's expression turned grim. "But your majesty, we found something. You need to see it." They followed Fenric back through the forest, using paths only the King's Guard knew. As they approached the palace, Varia saw the damage. Broken windows, scorch marks, bodies being carried out on stretchers. "How did they get in?" Kaelin asked. "Service entrance. Someone disabled the wards from the inside." Fenric led them to a side entrance, away from the main chaos. "We captured 3 rogues alive. They're being held in the interrogation chambers. But there's something else." He brought them to a study, one of the Northern House's private meeting rooms. The furniture was overturned, papers scattered. And on the wall, painted in blood, was a symbol. A wolf's head split by a crown. "The mark of the divided kingdom," Kaelin breathed. "I thought that faction was destroyed decades ago." "What faction?" Varia asked. "Wolves who believe the northern and southern territories should remain separate. No coalition, no unity, just eternal conflict." Fenric's voice was tense. "They've been dormant since your father crushed their leadership, but it seems they've regrouped. Or never truly died." Kaelin studied the symbol. "This changes everything. If the divided kingdom is behind the Borderlands attacks, then they're not trying to give the territories to the Southern Coalition," Varia interrupted, understanding dawning. "They're trying to make sure the coalition never happens. Permanent division means permanent conflict. And permanent conflict means they can operate in the chaos." Kaelin's expression turned dangerous. "Fenric, who had access to this room?" "Only the Northern Houses. It's their private council chamber. So one of them is either working with the divided kingdom or is part of it." Kaelin's jaw clenched. "Gather the house leaders. All of them. Throne room. 1 hour. Your Majesty, if one of them is a traitor, then we flush them out. Now." Kaelin turned to Varia. "You should rest. You've been through enough for one night."
"No."
Varia straightened despite her exhaustion. "If you're confronting them, I'm standing beside you." "We agreed. I'm not just a symbol. I'm part of this." Kaelin looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him.
"Fine.
"But you follow my lead." "Understood." "Understood." 1 hour later, the Northern Houses assembled in the throne room. All 12 alphas, looking various degrees of angry, confused, and nervous. Warriors lined the walls, Kaelin's most loyal guards, armed and ready. The tension was suffocating. Kaelin sat on his throne, Varia standing to his right in a position of honor that made several alphas' eyes narrow. She wore fresh clothes, proper court attire in deep crimson, and carried herself with the confidence she'd earned through blood and fire. "We were attacked," Kaelin began without preamble, "in my own palace, by rogues who were led inside by someone with access to our security protocols." His silver eyes swept the room. "Someone in this room is a traitor." Shocked murmurs. Denials. Iskira stood, her face pale with fury. "Your Majesty, you cannot seriously accuse the Northern Houses of—" "I can and I am." Kaelin's voice cracked like a whip. "The rogues entered through a service gate that requires specific wards to be disabled. Only palace staff and house leaders know those wards. My staff has been with me for years. You?" He gestured to the assembled alphas. Some of you have been waiting for an opportunity to weaken my rule since the moment I took the throne. This is outrageous, another alpha protested. We're loyal to. Are you? Kaelin stood, descending from the throne. Because the rogues left a symbol, the mark of the divided kingdom. A faction dedicated to ensuring North and South remain in eternal conflict. He stopped in front of Silas of House Stormcrest. Tell me, Alpha Silas, where does your house stand on the coalition summit? Silas met his gaze steadily. I support unity. I've said so publicly. And privately? I have concerns about Southern influence. But I'm no traitor. Kaelin moved on, stopping before each alpha in turn, asking pointed questions, watching reactions. Varia observed carefully, looking for tells, the nervous glances, the too quick denials, the defensive posturing. Most seemed genuinely shocked. But one alpha remained utterly calm. Alpha-tarian of House Shadowmere. A younger alpha, only recently ascended after his father's sudden death 6 months ago. He watched the proceedings with an expression of mild interest, as if this were a play, and he merely a spectator. Alpha-tarian, Kaelin said. You've been quiet. I have nothing to say, Your Majesty. I'm not a traitor. Your father was vocally opposed to the coalition. My father is dead. Tarian's smile was slight, controlled. I am not my father. No, Kaelin agreed. You're not. Your father was predictable. You, however, are something else entirely. He stepped closer. Where were you when the attack began? In my quarters. Sleeping. Can anyone verify that? I sleep alone, Your Majesty. A personal preference. How convenient. Tarian's smile widened fractionally. Isn't it? The challenge in his tone was subtle but unmistakable. Various instincts screamed warning. This alpha was dangerous, not through obvious aggression, but through careful control. Search House Shadowmere's quarters, Kaelin ordered.
Now.
You have no right, Tarian began. I have every right. My palace was invaded. My people were killed. And you're the only one here who doesn't seem bothered by that fact. Kaelin's voice dropped to a lethal quiet. So either you're innocent and the search will prove it, or you're guilty and we're about to find out exactly what you're hiding. Warriors moved immediately, heading for the guest wing where the northern houses stayed when visiting Frostholm. Tarian's expression never changed. You'll find nothing. We'll see. The wait was agonizing. 10 minutes. 15. Then Fenric returned, carrying a small wooden box. Found this hidden in a locked drawer, he said, setting it on a table. Warded against detection. Took our best mage to crack it. Kaelin opened the box. Inside were papers, correspondence, written in code. And beneath them, a ring bearing the symbol of the divided kingdom. The throne room erupted. Arrest him, Kaelin commanded. Warriors moved toward Tarian, but the alpha was already shifting, a massive gray wolf with eyes like chips of ice. He lunged, not at Kaelin, but at Varia. She barely had time to react. Training kicked in. She dropped low. The curved blade Kaelin had given her appearing in her hand as if summoned. Tarian's jaws snapped where her throat had been a second before. Then Kaelin was there, his own shift instantaneous. Two wolves collided with the force of an avalanche, fangs and claws tearing. The other alphas backed away, their warriors uncertain whether to intervene or stand down. Varia watched, her heart in her throat, as Kaelin and Tarian fought with brutal efficiency. They were evenly matched in size, but Kaelin fought with the fury of a king betrayed. It was over in less than a minute. Kaelin's jaws locked around Tarian's throat. One decisive bite, and the traitor went still. When Kaelin shifted back to human form, he was covered in blood. His silver eyes blazed as he looked at the assembled houses. Let this be clear, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. I don't care about your bloodlines. I don't care about your house's ancient privileges. If you betray this kingdom, if you work against unity, if you put your ambitions above the lives of innocent wolves, he gestured to Tarian's corpse. This is what awaits you. No one spoke. No one moved. The summit proceeds as planned, Kaelin continued. Lady Varia will stand beside me as proof that the Northern Wastes protects all wolves. And anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me directly. He smiled without humor. I welcome the attempt. Silence. Then one by one, the alphas bowed, acknowledgement of his dominance, his right to rule. All except Askira, who stared at Varia with naked hatred before finally, reluctantly, bowing her head. This assembly is dismissed, Kaelin said. Return to your territories. Prepare your delegations for the summit. And pray I don't find any more traitors in your ranks. The alphas fled like wolves before a wildfire. When the throne room was empty except for Kaelin, Varia, and Fenric, Kaelin's careful control finally cracked. He sagged against the throne, exhaustion written in every line of his body. One down, he muttered. How many more are hiding in the shadows? At least we know the divided kingdom is active, Fenric said. That's more than we had this morning. It's not enough. Tarion was a pawn, not the architect. Kaelin looked at Varia. They went after you specifically. That means you're more dangerous to them than I realized. Because I survived? Because I can testify to their attacks. Because you're proof that their strategy is failing. Kaelin stood, moving toward her. They wanted to create chaos in the borderlands. Instead, they created a survivor who stands against them, a symbol of resistance. His hand reached out, almost touching her face before he caught himself and pulled back. You're their worst nightmare, Varia. An Omega who refuses to be a victim. Then we use that, Varia said firmly. At the summit, we show them that their attacks only made us stronger. Us. Kaelin repeated the word softly. When did this become us? The moment you offered your hand in those ruins. Varia met his gaze. Whether you want to admit it or not, we're in this together now. Something shifted in Kaelin's expression, walls crumbling, defenses falling. Varia, what I said in the tunnels was true, she interrupted. I know it terrifies you. It terrifies me too. But ignoring it won't make it go away. It could get you killed. If our enemies realize there's a genuine bond forming, then they'll use it against us. I know. Varia stepped closer. But Kaelin, they're already trying to kill me. At least if we acknowledge what's happening, we can face it together instead of pretending we're just allies of convenience. Fenric cleared his throat pointedly. Should I leave? Yes, both Kaelin and Varia said simultaneously. The beta grinned and made himself scarce, closing the throne room doors behind him. Alone, the tension between them intensified. Kaelin looked at Varia like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, a threat he couldn't neutralize, a hope he didn't dare believe in. I've spent 12 years building walls, he said quietly. After my father died, after I saw what love did to people, how it could be weaponized, twisted, used to destroy, I swore I'd never let anyone get close enough to hurt me that way. And now you're standing here, covered in blood from fighting my enemies, wearing my pendant like it's armor, looking at me like, he stopped, jaw clenching. Like I'm worth saving. You are worth saving. You don't know what I've done. The choices I've made. The wolves I've killed to keep this kingdom together. You're right. I don't know all of it. Varia closed the remaining distance between them. But I know you found me when you didn't have to. Protected me when it would have been easier to let me die. Gave me purpose when I had none. Her hand found his. Whatever darkness you're carrying, Kaelin, I'm not afraid of it. His fingers intertwined with hers, the touch sending electricity racing through her veins. You should be. Probably. But I've discovered I'm not very good at being afraid anymore. Kaelin's laugh was broken, almost desperate. What are you doing to me? The same thing you're doing to me. Making me hope when hope seems impossible. Making me feel when I thought I was empty. Varia's other hand came up to rest over his heart, feeling it race beneath her palm. Making me believe in bonds I didn't think existed. This is insane. Completely. It's going to complicate everything. I know. We could both end up dead. Probably. So why? His forehead came to rest against hers, his voice dropping to a whisper. Why does this feel like the only sane thing in a world gone mad? Because maybe it is, Varia breathed. For a long moment, they simply stood there, foreheads touching, hands clasped, breathing synchronized. The bond between them hummed with recognition, with rightness, with the inevitability of fate finally acknowledged. The summit is in 10 days, Kaelin said finally. If we're doing this, if we're admitting what's happening, we need to be smart about it. Agreed. No public declarations. Not yet. Our enemies can't know about the bond until we're ready to use it strategically. Makes sense. But privately, he pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Privately, I need you to know something. Whatever happens at that summit, whatever political games we have to play, his hand squeezed hers. This is real. You're not just a symbol or a strategy. Don't, Varia interrupted gently. Don't say it yet. Not until we're sure we'll both survive long enough for it to matter. Relief and frustration warred in his expression. When did you get so practical? Around the same time I started fighting rogues in underground tunnels. She managed to smile. I'm a fast learner. That you are. Kaelin's thumb brushed over her knuckles.
Go. Rest.
We have 9 days to prepare, and you need to be ready for whatever the summit throws at us. What about you? You haven't slept in days. I'll sleep when this is over. Kaelin. I'll try, he amended. For you, I'll try. It was the best she'd get. Varia nodded, reluctantly releasing his hand and heading for the doors. Varia, Kaelin called when she reached the threshold. She turned. Yes, thank you. For standing beside me today. For not running when you had every reason to. Where would I run to? You're the only place that feels like home. The words hung in the air between them, too honest, too raw, too true. Then Varia fled before she could say anything more dangerous. Behind her, Kaelin stood alone in the throne room, staring at the spot where she'd been and finally, let himself acknowledge what he'd been fighting since the moment he'd found her in those ruins. He was falling in love with her. No, that was a lie. He'd already fallen. And the impact was going to change everything. Chapter 6. The next 9 days passed in a blur of preparation. Varia trained with Fenric every morning, combat drills that left her bruised and stronger. She studied with Calyx every afternoon, politics, history, the intricate web of alliances and grudges that define the 5 kingdoms. And every evening, she met with Kaelin to review strategy for the summit. Those evening meetings were the hardest. They maintained professional distance in front of others, but alone. The bond between them grew impossible to ignore. Small touches that lingered too long. Gazes that held more meaning than words. The constant awareness of each other, like a compass always pointing north. They didn't speak of it, but it hummed between them, inevitable and terrifying. On the 5th day, Calyx cornered Varia in the library. You're sleeping with him, the advisor said bluntly. Varia choked on her tea. I'm absolutely not. I didn't mean literally. Though the way you two look at each other, it's only a matter of time. Calyx settled into a chair across from her. I meant your bonding. Actually bonding. Not the political arrangement everyone assumes, but a real mate bond. There was no point denying it. Is it that obvious? To me?
Yes.
To everyone else. Calyx tilted her head. Not yet. But it will be. Mate bonds have tells, scent changes, synchronized movements, the way you both unconsciously mirror each other's posture. She leaned forward. Varia, this is dangerous. If your enemies realize. I know. We've discussed it. And we're being careful. No public displays. Nothing that would confirm suspicions. Varia set down her teacup. But I'm not going to apologize for it, Calyx. I didn't ask for this bond, but I'm not running from it either. I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking you to be smart. Calyx's glacial eyes softened. I watched Kaelin build walls for 12 years. Watched him refuse every potential mate, every alliance marriage, every opportunity for connection. He was turning into his father, cold, calculating, alone. She paused. Then you stumbled into his life, and those walls started crumbling. It's both beautiful and terrifying to witness. You think I'm making him weak.
No.
I think you're making him human. There's a difference. Calyx stood, moving to the window. But Varia, you need to understand what you're walking into. The summit isn't just about Borderlands protection. It's about power. The Southern Coalition wants to expand north. Some of Kalen's own houses want him weakened. The divided kingdom wants eternal conflict. She turned back. And you're the focal point of all those conflicting agendas. Everyone will be watching you, judging whether you're worthy of standing beside a king. I know.
Do you?
Because one wrong word, one moment of weakness, and they'll use it to destroy everything Kalen's built. Calyx's voice turned gentle. I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm trying to prepare you. The throne room confrontation with Tarion? That was easy compared to what you'll face at the summit. Varia thought of the northern houses, of Askira's hatred, of political maneuvering she barely understood. Then teach me. Show me how to survive it. Calyx smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her usual cool demeanor. That's the right answer.
Come on.
We have 4 days left, and you need to learn how to turn their weapons against them. On the 7th day, 3 unexpected visitors arrived at Frostholm. Varia was in the training yard, sparring with Fenric, when the horn sounded, the pattern indicating friendly approach. She lowered her practice blade, watching as the gates opened. 3 wolves entered, 2 women and a man, all bearing the marks of hard travel. The older woman in front had gray-streaked auburn hair and eyes the color of amber. Something about her felt familiar, though Varia couldn't place why. Kalen emerged from the palace, Calyx at his side. His expression was carefully neutral, but Varia saw tension in his shoulders.
Thessa, he said.
This is unexpected. Your Majesty. The woman bowed, but there was warmth in her tone. I heard about the attacks. About the girl you found in Silverpine. Her gaze found Varia across the courtyard. I had to see for myself. See what? If the rumors are true. If you've finally found. Thessa stopped, her eyes widening as she studied Varia more closely. Gods above. It is true. Kalen's jaw tightened. Inside.
Now.
This isn't a conversation for open courtyards. They moved to private study. Varia followed, confused and increasingly nervous. Who were these people, and what rumors were they talking about? Once the door closed, Thessa turned to Kalen. She's your mate. Your true mate. I can see the bond forming even if you're trying to hide it. How? Kalen started. Because I'm a bond weaver, you stubborn wolf. Reading mate bonds is literally what I do. Thessa moved closer to Varia, her expression softening. Hello, child. I'm Thessa Moonwhisper, Calyx's sister. I specialize in mate bond magic, identifying them, strengthening them, understanding their nature. Calyx sent for you, Kalen said flatly. I did, Calyx confirmed, unapologetic. Because you two are stumbling around like cubs in a thunderstorm, and you need guidance before you accidentally do something catastrophic. We're fine, Kalen said. You're absolutely not fine. Thessa circled Varia slowly, her eyes glowing faintly with magic. The bond is strong. Unusually strong for one so new. It's already past the recognition stage and moving into the anchoring phase. What does that mean? Varia asked. It means your souls are starting to intertwine. Soon, you'll be able to sense each other's emotions, locations, and physical state. The bond will become permanent, unbreakable except by death. Thessa's expression turned serious. And it means if one of you is significantly harmed, the other will feel it. Pain, injury, even death can travel across a mate bond. Varia's stomach dropped. So, if someone hurts me, Kalen will feel it, and vice versa. Thessa turned to the king. Which makes both of you tremendous liabilities to each other. Your enemies could torture one to break the other. This is why I didn't want to acknowledge the bond, Kalen said, frustration bleeding through his control. It creates vulnerabilities we can't afford. It also creates strengths, Thessa countered. A bonded pair fights better together. Thinks clearer. Draws power from each other. She gestured to her companions, the other woman, and the man who'd remained silent. This is Mireia and Bastian, also bonded mates. They've fought in 3 territorial wars and survived because their bond made them stronger, not weaker. Mireia stepped forward. She was younger, maybe 30, with dark skin and fierce eyes. The bond is a tool. Like any weapon, it can be used against you or wielded effectively. Her hand found Bastian's. But trying to deny it, trying to fight what's inevitable, that's what creates real danger. What do you suggest?
Kaelin asked.
Complete the bond, Thessa said simply. Stop fighting it. Let it fully form before the summit. Absolutely not. Kaelin's voice turned to ice. That's a permanent commitment. Varia deserves better than being forced into a bond because of political timing. I'm not being forced, Varia said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I'm not being forced, she repeated, stronger now. I know what's happening between us. I feel it every time we're in the same room. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it complicates everything. She met Kaelin's silver gaze. But Thessa's right. Fighting it isn't making it go away. It's just making us vulnerable in different ways. Varia. Let me finish. She stepped closer to him. You said this bond could get me killed. But everything about my life could get me killed. The divided kingdom wants me dead.
Political enemies want me dead.
I'm already a target. Her hand found his. At least if we complete the bond, we face those threats together. Fully armed instead of half-blind. Kaelin stared at her, conflict written across his features. You don't know what you're asking. A completed mate bond is forever. There's no walking away, no changing your mind if you realize you made a mistake. Do you think I'm a mistake?
No. Gods, no.
He stopped, jaw clenching. You're the best thing that's happened to me in 12 years. Which is exactly why I don't want to trap you in a bond you might regret. Then let me choose, Varia said. Stop trying to protect me from my own decisions. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Silence filled the study. Thessa watched with knowing eyes. Calyx wore an expression Varia had never seen, something almost like pride. The summit is in 3 days, Thessa said softly. If you're going to complete the bond, it needs to happen before then. A partial bond is unstable, unpredictable, but a completed bond, that's solid, powerful. It would actually help at the summit.
How?
Kaelin asked. Because bonded mates can't lie to each other. Not effectively. The bond makes deception almost impossible. Thessa smiled. If you stand before the coalition as true bonded mates, no one can accuse you of political theater. They'll sense the authenticity. It also means they can't claim, I chose Varia for strategic reasons alone, Kaelin said slowly, understanding dawning. The bond proves it's real.
Exactly.
It neutralizes one of your opponent's strongest arguments, that you're using an Omega as a prop. Thessa moved toward the door. Think about it. You have until tomorrow night. After that, there won't be time for the bonding ceremony before the summit. She left with Mireia and Bastian, leaving Kaelin, Varia, and Calyx alone. You knew this would happen, Kaelin said to his advisor. When you sent for Thessa. I suspected. You're both terrible at hiding your feelings. Calyx headed for the door. For what it's worth, I think Varia's right. The bond is forming whether you want it to or not. You might as well make it official and gain the advantages instead of suffering the vulnerabilities. When she left, Varia and Kaelin stood in heavy silence. This isn't how I wanted this to happen, Kaelin said finally. I don't know.
Time.
The chance to court you properly. To let you choose without pressure or political calculations. We don't get that luxury. We never did. Varia moved into his space, close enough to feel his warmth. From the moment you found me, everything has been survival and strategy. But that doesn't make this less real. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Are you sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be bound to me, to everything I am, everything I've done, everything I might become. I know. You'll be bound to a king who's made brutal choices. who's killed to protect his kingdom, who carries enough blood on his hands to drown in. I know that too. Various hands covered his. But you're also the king who stopped in the middle of hunting rogues to save one Omega he didn't have to save, who gave me purpose when I had none, who looks at me like I matter. Her voice dropped. Who made me want to live again. Kaelin's forehead came to rest against hers. You're going to be the death of me. Or the saving of you. We'll see which happens first. His laugh was quiet, almost broken. When did you get so brave? The moment you taught me I was allowed to be. They stood like that, breathing synchronized, hearts beating in tandem. The bond between them pulsed with recognition, with need, with the inevitability of two souls meant to collide. Tomorrow night, Kaelin said, we complete the bond. But Varia. Yes. I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Not just politically, but personally. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I'm not an easy man to love. I'm controlling, paranoid, I work too much and trust too little. I'll drive you insane with my need to protect you. I'll probably try to wrap you in guards and wards and keep you safe from everything, including your own choices. Sounds terrible, Varia said dryly. Anything else? I'll expect honesty. Complete, brutal honesty. I've had enough people lie to me for a lifetime. I can be honest. And he hesitated. I'll probably fall in love with you so completely that it terrifies me. Actually, that's a lie. I'm already halfway there. Varia's breath caught. Kaelin. You said you wanted honesty. That's honest. I'm falling for you, Varia. Happened since you told that rogue to slit your throat. And completing this bond, making it permanent, his voice roughened. It's not a sacrifice for me. It's not a political move. It's the most selfish thing I've ever done, because I want you. I want this bond. I want forever with you. Even knowing forever might be terrifyingly short. Tears pricked Varia's eyes. You're right. You are terrible at romance. I warned you. But for what it's worth, she rose on her toes, bringing her lips close to his. I'm falling too. And I'm not afraid of forever. Not with you. The kiss that followed was nothing like the careful, controlled touches they'd shared before. This was desperate, honest, raw. Kaelin's hands tangled in her hair. Various fingers gripped his shirt like she could anchor herself to him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kaelin rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow night, he whispered. We make this official. Tomorrow night, Varia agreed. What neither of them knew was that in the shadows of Frostholm, enemies were already moving. The divided kingdom had learned of the potential bond. And they were planning something that would test not just the strength of Kaelin and Varia's connection, but whether their love could survive what was coming. Because fate never made anything easy. And the price of their bond was about to be revealed in blood and fire. Chapter 7. The bonding ceremony was scheduled for midnight, the traditional time when the veil between souls was thinnest. Various spent the day in a daze of preparation. Calyx oversaw everything with ruthless efficiency, ritual baths, specific herbs, the proper ceremonial clothing. White silk that felt like water against Varia's skin, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that supposedly strengthened mate bonds. Nervous, Calyx asked as she braided Varia's hair with small crystals that caught the light. Terrified, Varia admitted. Good. You should be. This isn't something to enter lightly. Calyx's hands were gentle despite her stern words. But I think you're making the right choice. For what it's worth. You really think so? I've known Kaelin since he was 16. I watched him close himself off after his father's death, build walls so high even I couldn't scale them. Calyx met Varia's eyes in the mirror. You're the first person who made him want to tear those walls down. That's either destiny or spectacular coincidence. Either way, it's worth fighting for. A knock interrupted them. Thessa entered, carrying a wooden box carved with ancient symbols. The bonding materials, she said, setting the box on the table. Everything you'll need for the ceremony. She opened it to reveal 2 silver cuffs, a ceremonial blade, herbs wrapped in silk, and a vial of something that glowed faintly in the dim light. What is that? Varia asked, pointing to the vial. Concentrated moon water. It amplifies the bond magic, helps the connection form more completely. Thessa smiled. Don't worry. It doesn't taste as terrible as it looks. Comforting. The ceremony itself is simple, Thessa continued. You'll exchange blood, a small cut on each palm, then you press them together. The moon water is consumed. Then Kalen will mark you, and you'll mark him. The bond will snap into place fully, permanently. Varia's hand went unconsciously to her neck, where Kalen's mark would go, where everyone would see it, know she belonged to him, that they were bound. Having second thoughts?
Calyx asked. No.
Just processing. Varia looked at both women. What if I'm not enough? What if the bond forms and Kalen realizes he made a mistake? Bonds don't work that way, Thessa said gently. They don't form between incompatible souls. If your bond is this strong, this fast, it's because you're meant for each other. Trust in that. And if our enemies use it against us? They'll try. But Varia, Calyx gripped her shoulder. You've survived everything thrown at you so far. You'll survive this too. Both of you will. Midnight approached like an executioner's footsteps. Varia was led to the palace's inner sanctum, a room she'd never entered before. It was circular, with walls of pure white stone and a domed ceiling painted with constellations. Candles burned in alcoves, casting dancing shadows. The air hummed with old magic. Kalen was already there. He wore black, simple pants and a shirt open at the collar, no crown, no royal regalia. Just a man, waiting for his mate. His silver eyes tracked her entrance with an intensity that made her skin flush. You're beautiful, he said quietly. You're not so bad yourself. The attempt at levity fell flat. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on both of them. Thessa entered, Mireia and Bastion flanking her. Are you both ready? Kalen looked at Varia. Last chance to change your mind. Are you trying to change yours? Never. But I need to know you're sure. Varia crossed the space between them, taking his hand. I'm sure. Are you? More sure than I've ever been about anything. His fingers intertwined with hers. Let's do this. Thessa gestured for them to kneel facing each other in the center of the room. Varia's heart hammered as she settled on the cold stone, Kalen mirroring her position close enough that their knees touched. The bonding ceremony is ancient, Thessa began, her voice taking on a ritual cadence. Older than the 5 kingdoms, older than pack hierarchies, older than the divisions we've created between wolves. It recognizes one truth, that some souls are meant to find each other, to complete each other, to burn together. She handed Kalen the ceremonial blade. It was small, wickedly sharp, with a handle of bone and silver. Blood binds, Thessa continued. Blood speaks truth. Kalen Thorn, King of the Northern Wastes, do you offer your blood freely to this bond? I do. Kalen's voice was steady. He drew the blade across his palm without flinching. Blood welled, dark and vital. Varia of Silverpine, do you offer your blood freely to this bond? Varia took the blade with trembling hands. I do. The cut stung, sharp and clarifying. She watched her own blood mix with Kalen's as they pressed their palms together. The moment their blood touched, power surged. Varia gasped, feeling Kalen's presence flood into her. His strength, his fear, his desperate hope, his love so fierce it almost burned. And she felt him sensing her in return, all her walls crumbling, everything she was laid bare. The blood recognizes, Thessa said. Now the vow. Kalen, speak your truth. Kalen's silver eyes never left Varia's. I vow to protect you with everything I am, to honor your strength even when it terrifies me, to stand beside you, not above you, to choose you every day for however many days we're given. His voice roughened. I vow to love you fiercely, completely, without reservation or regret. You are mine, and I am yours. From this moment until my last breath. Tears streamed down Varia's face. I vow to stand with you against whatever darkness comes. To be honest even when the truth is painful. To remind you that strength and compassion aren't enemies. Her voice shook but held. I vow to love you despite your walls, despite your scars, despite everything you think makes you unlovable. You are mine, and I am yours. From this moment until stars fall from the sky. The vows are spoken, Thessa said. Now seal them. She handed them the vial of moon water. Kalen drank first, his face twisting at the taste, then passed it to Varia. She drank, and liquid silver burned down her throat, into her veins, setting every nerve alight. The bond between them exploded into full awareness. Suddenly Varia could feel Kalen, not just his hand in hers, but his heartbeat syncing with hers, his emotions bleeding into her consciousness, the depth of his love hitting her like a physical force. And she knew he felt the same from her. Every wall she'd ever built, every defense, all of it dissolved, leaving nothing but raw connection. Now the mark, Thessa said. Kalen, claim your mate. Kalen's hand came up to cup Varia's face, tilting her head to expose her throat. His eyes had gone pure silver, wolves rising to the surface. This will hurt, he whispered. I know. And everyone will see it. Know you're bonded. Mine. Good. His smile was fierce, possessive, and utterly tender. Then he leaned in, and his teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder. Pain exploded, sharp and overwhelming. But beneath it, pleasure, dark and intoxicating. The bond mark wasn't just a bite. It was magic, werewolf nature, soul-deep claiming. Varia cried out, her fingers digging into Kalen's shoulders as power poured through the connection. When he pulled back, his lips were stained with her blood. The mark on her neck pulsed, silver light spreading through the wound before it healed into a perfect scar, the shape of a wolf's bite, glowing faintly. Your turn, Thessa said to Varia. Claim your mate. Varia's wolf surged forward, stronger than it had ever been, amplified by the bond. She felt her own eyes shift, her canines lengthen. Kalen tilted his head, offering his throat in a display of trust that made her chest ache. She marked him, felt he shuddered against her, tasted his blood and his power and his soul. When she pulled back, his mark mirrored hers, glowing silver against tanned skin. The bond is complete, Thessa announced. What was two is now one. What was separate is now joined. No force in this world or the next can break what has been sealed here tonight. The candles flared simultaneously, then died. In the sudden darkness, Varia felt the bond settle into place, permanent, unbreakable, thrumming with life. When the light returned, everything had changed. Varia could feel Kalen's presence in her mind, not intrusive, but there, a warm constant that assured her he was alive, safe, with her. And she knew he felt the same from her. How do you feel? He asked softly. Complete, Varia whispered. Like I was missing a piece of myself, and just found it. Yes. His hand came up to trace the mark on her neck, possessive and gentle. Mine. Yours, she agreed. And you're mine. Always. Thessa cleared her throat. Congratulations. You're now the most powerful bonded pair in the Northern Territories. Try not to accidentally set things on fire with your combined energy. That's actually a risk? Varia asked. Oh yes. New bonds are volatile. You'll need to be careful until you learn to control the power flow. Thessa smiled. But that's a problem for tomorrow.
Tonight, rest.
Let the bond settle. She left with Mireia and Bastion, closing the door softly behind them. Alone, Kalen and Varia stayed kneeling, foreheads pressed together, hands still clasped. I can feel you, Kalen said, wondering in his voice. Not just physically. I can sense your emotions, your presence. It's overwhelming. Varia supplied.
Perfect. Terrifying. Both.
We just permanently bound our souls together right before the most dangerous political summit of your reign. Varia laughed shakily. We might be insane. Definitely insane. Kalen's hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up. But I wouldn't change it. Not for anything. He kissed her, and this time, with the bond fully formed, it was different.
Deeper.
Varia felt not just his touch, but his emotions, his desire, his love flooding through their connection. It was intoxicating and overwhelming and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kaelin helped her to her feet.
Come on, he said.
We should rest. The summit starts in 2 days, and we need. A scream split the night. Then another. The clash of steel. The smell of smoke. Kaelin's expression went from tender to deadly in a heartbeat. Not again. They ran to the windows. Below, in the courtyard, chaos reigned. But this wasn't a rogue attacking randomly. This was coordinated. Organized. Warriors in unmarked armor poured through the gates, cutting down guards with ruthless efficiency. And in their center, commanding them, was a figure Varia recognized from court. That's impossible, she breathed. We killed him. But there stood Tyrion of House Shadowmere, very much alive, directing the assault with cold precision. The body we found wasn't his, Kaelin said, understanding and fury warring in his voice. He sent a double. Staged his own death. Which means he's been planning this. Knew we'd come for him. Wanted us distracted with the bonding ceremony while he attacked with full force. Kaelin was already moving, grabbing weapons from the alcove. He played us perfectly. Varia felt cold rage settle over her. Then let's return the favor. Kaelin looked at her, and through the bond, she felt his fear for her safety, his desire to lock her somewhere secure, his knowledge that she'd never forgive him if he tried. Together, he asked. Always, she replied. They ran toward the battle, newly bonded and ready to face whatever fresh hell was waiting. What neither of them realized was that the attack wasn't Tyrion's real objective. It was a distraction. Because while they fought in the courtyard, assassins were moving through the palace toward a very specific target, the Southern Coalition delegates who'd arrived early for the summit. The delegates Kaelin was supposed to protect. And if they died on northern soil, the summit would be cancelled. The borderlands would fall. And the divided kingdom would finally have the eternal conflict they'd been engineering all along. The trap was perfect, and Kaelin and Varia had walked right into it. Chapter 8. Kaelin felt it through the bond before Varia could speak. The sudden spike of realization, the cold horror of understanding. The delegates, they said simultaneously. It's a distraction. Varia gasped as they ran through corridors toward the guest wing. Tyrion wants us focused on the courtyard while assassins go after the coalition representatives. Kaelin's mind raced, tactical instincts sharpened by 12 years of surviving political warfare. If they die here, on my soil, it proves I can't protect anyone. The summit collapses. The borderlands go to the coalition or dissolve entirely. And the divided kingdom gets exactly what they want. Permanent chaos. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Fenric, who was bloodied but mobile, leading a group of warriors. The guest wing is under siege, the beta reported. At least 20 assassins. They've already killed 4 of our guards and are working their way toward the delegates' rooms. His amber eyes were fierce. The coalition wolves are barricaded inside, but it's only a matter of time. How long can they hold? Kaelin demanded. 10 minutes. Maybe less. Then we move now. Fenric, take half the warriors and secure the courtyard. I need Tyrion alive. He's our only link to whoever's funding this nightmare. Kaelin's voice turned deadly cold. Everyone else with me. They sprinted toward the guest wing, the bond humming between Kaelin and Varia, allowing them to move in perfect synchronization. She felt his battle focus, his strategic mind calculating angles and risks. He felt her determination, her rage at being used as a pawn in someone else's game. The guest wing hallway was a slaughterhouse. Bodies, both palace guards and assassins, littered the floor. The attackers wore the same unmarked black armor, their faces hidden behind featureless masks. Professional killers, Varia realized. Not rogues driven by bloodlust, but soldiers following orders. 3 assassins stood outside a barricaded door, working methodically to break through. They turned as Kaelin's group approached, weapons rising. Protect the door, Kalen commanded his warriors. Then to Varia, through the bond more than words. Stay behind me. Beside you, she corrected, raising her blades. She felt his frustration and reluctant pride in equal measure as they engaged. The assassins fought with brutal efficiency, but Kalen was furious given form. His sword flashed, each movement precise and lethal. Varia darted in when openings appeared, her smaller size an advantage in the confined space. Strike to the knee, blade under ribs, throat cut clean. The bond made them devastating. Kalen knew where she'd move before she moved. Varia sensed his intentions, flowing around his attacks like water around stone. They weren't just fighting together, they were fighting as one. Within minutes, all three assassins lay dead. Your Majesty, a voice from behind the barricaded door. Southern accent, strained with fear. Is it safe? It's safe, Kalen called. I'm removing the barricade. Don't attack. The door cracked open, and three wolves emerged, weapons drawn, and ready despite their obvious terror. 2 men and a woman, all wearing the formal attire of coalition diplomats now torn and blood-stained. Ambassador Rydian. Kalen acknowledged the older of the 2 men. Are you injured? Minor cuts. Nothing serious. Rydian's dark eyes swept the carnage, his expression grim. This is quite the welcome, Your Majesty. The coalition will have questions about your security protocols. I'm sure they will. We can discuss my failures after I've finished keeping you alive. Kalen gestured to his warriors. Escort them to the throne room. It's the most defensible position. Triple the guards. No one enters without my personal clearance. Your Majesty, the woman, Ambassador Vea, spoke up. Her voice shook but held. There were others. Coalition staff, advisors. They were in different rooms when the attack started. We heard screaming but couldn't. We'll find them, Kalen promised.
Go. Now.
The delegates fled with their warrior escort. Kalen and Varia pressed deeper into the guest wing, following the sounds of ongoing combat. They found 2 more groups of assassins.
Killed them.
Rescued 4 coalition staff members who'd barricaded themselves in a storage closet. Send them toward the throne room with guards. But the palace was massive, and the assassins had spread throughout like poison. This isn't sustainable, Varia said as they cleared another corridor. There are too many entry points, too many rooms. We can't protect everyone simultaneously. I know. Kalen's frustration bled through the bond. Tyrion planned this perfectly. He studied the palace layout, found every weakness, and timed the attack for maximum chaos. Then we stop playing defense. We go after him directly. Varia. He's in the courtyard directing this, right? Cut off the head, the body dies. She met his gaze. You taught me that. Eliminate the strategic center, and the rest collapses. Through the bond, she felt his war with himself, the king who knew she was right, and the mate who wanted to lock her somewhere safe. Together, she said firmly. We end this together. His hand found hers, squeezed once. Together. The courtyard was chaotic. Fenric had managed to push Tyrion's forces back, but barely. Bodies covered the ground. The air reeked of blood and smoke. And in the center of it all stood Tyrion, fighting with the calm precision of someone who'd already won. He saw Kalen and smiled. Your Majesty, how wonderful of you to join us. Tyrion's voice carried across the battle. I trust you found my little gift in the guest wing? You're dead, Kalen snarled. Obviously not. Though I'll admit, finding someone willing to die wearing my face was challenging. Expensive, but worth it. Tyrion gestured lazily. Did you enjoy your bonding ceremony? I timed the attack specifically to interrupt that tender moment. Romantic, wasn't it? Varia felt rage surge through the bond, Kalen's and her own, amplifying each other until it was almost overwhelming. You've been planning this since before the council meeting, Kalen said, his voice deadly calm. The attack at Silverpine, the symbol in the blood, even your supposed death, all theater to put us exactly where you wanted us. Finally catching on? I was beginning to worry you'd gone soft. Tyrion's gaze shifted to Varia, and his smile widened. And you? the tragic Omega survivor. Tell me, did you really think you mattered? That you were anything more than convenient bait? Bait. Varia's hand tightened on her blade. Of course. An Omega settlement destroyed, one survivor left alive. Naturally, the noble king would investigate. Naturally, he'd bring that survivor to court. Naturally, he'd become attached, distracted, and compromised. Tyrion laughed. You were perfect. So damaged, so desperate for purpose that you'd do anything Kaelin asked, including binding yourself to him permanently, making him vulnerable in ways he'd never been before. The words hit like physical blows. Through the bond, Varia felt Kaelin's fury, his denial, but beneath it, a flicker of doubt. Has he been manipulated? Had his feelings for her been engineered? Don't, Varia said through their connection. Don't let him twist this. But it's already twisted, isn't it? Tyrion continued, as if he could hear their silent exchange. Because now you're bonded, which means hurting one hurts the other. And I wonder, his expression turned cruel. How much pain can a bond withstand before it shatters? He moved impossibly fast. Not toward Kaelin, but toward Varia. Kaelin's warning scream came simultaneously with his body slamming into hers, shoving her aside. Tyrion's blade, poisoned, she realized with horror. She could smell the toxin, missed her throat by inches. But caught Kaelin's side instead. Pain exploded through the bond. Not just Kaelin's physical agony, but the poison burning through his system, spreading with each heartbeat. Varia screamed, feeling it as if the blade had pierced her own flesh. Kaelin stumbled, his face going gray. Wolfsbane. Concentrated. He collapsed. Varia dove to catch him, her hands coming away bloody. Through the bond, she felt his life force flickering, the poison working fast. Too fast. 3 minutes, Tyrion said conversationally. That's how long he has before the wolfsbane reaches his heart. And you, he smiled at Varia. You get to feel every second of him dying. Feel how a mate bond really works. It's not strength. It's the cruelest weakness there is. Rage consumed her. Pure, clarifying rage that burned away fear, doubt, everything except the need to destroy the wolf who'd poisoned her mate. Varia stood, her blades rising. Then let's test which is stronger, your poison or my fury. She attacked. Later, warriors would describe it as watching a natural disaster in wolf form. Varia moved with speed she shouldn't have possessed, struck with strength that defied her small frame. The bond was feeding her Kaelin's power, even as he lay dying, amplifying her abilities beyond normal limits. Tyrion fought back, but he'd miscalculated. He'd expected her to break, to crumble watching her mate die. Instead, she'd become something far more dangerous, a bonded wolf with nothing left to lose. She drove him back across the courtyard, her blades a silver blur. Cut his arm, his leg, his face. Each strike was precision born of Fenric's training and desperation born of love. You're too late, Tyrion gasped, bleeding from a dozen wounds.
He's already dying.
You can feel it, can't you? Feel him slipping away. She could. Gods, she could. Kaelin's presence in her mind was fading, growing distant, cold. But Varia had learned something important in the past weeks. She was stronger than anyone, including herself, had believed possible. You're right, she said, her voice eerily calm. I can feel him dying. Which means I know exactly how much time I have to finish you before I need to save him. She lunged. Tyrion tried to dodge, but he was slower now, wounded. Her blade found his throat. 2 minutes, she whispered as his eyes widened. That's how long you have before you bleed out. Seems fair, doesn't it? She left him choking on his own blood and ran back to Kaelin. He was barely conscious, his lips blue, his skin clammy. Through the bond, his heartbeat was erratic, weakening. Stay with me, Varia demanded, her hands pressing against his wound. Don't you dare die. We just bonded. We have decades ahead of us. You don't get to leave now. Varia, his voice was thread-thin. The poison. Can't. Shut up. Save your strength. She looked around desperately.
Healer.
I need a healer now, Calyx appeared, bloody but moving. The healers are overwhelmed. Casualties everywhere. Then you do it. You're a moon whisper. You have magic. Use it. I'm not a healing mage. I don't have the power to try. Varia's voice broke.
Please.
I can't lose him. Not after everything. Please. Calyx knelt beside them, her glacial eyes assessing the wound. The wolfsbane is too concentrated. Even if I had full healing abilities, I couldn't extract it all. Not without, she stopped. Without what? Without diluting it. Spreading it between two systems instead of one. Calyx looked at Varia. The bond. It's already sharing his pain with you. If you deliberately open the connection wider, let the poison flow through to you as well, it would reduce the concentration in his blood. Do it. Varia, it could kill you both. Or save us both. Those are better odds than watching him die, while I do nothing. Varia gripped Kalen's hand. Tell me how. Calyx's expression shifted to something like respect. You focus on the bond. Pull his pain, his poison, everything into yourself. The bond will try to protect you by shutting down, but you have to keep it open. Force it to accept the transfer. How do I? You're bonded mates. You'll know. Varia closed her eyes and dove into the bond. She found Kalen there, his consciousness flickering like a candle in a storm. The poison was black corruption spreading through his veins, choking his life force. She reached for it. Pain exploded as the wolfsbane began flowing through their connection into her. It burned like liquid fire, every nerve screaming. But Varia held on, pulling more, accepting his agony into herself. What are you doing? Kalen's voice in her mind, weak but horrified. Saving you. You'll die. Then we die together. I can live with that. I can't. Varia, please. You don't get to make this choice. I do. She pulled harder, feeling the poison spread through her own system now. Her heart stuttered. Her vision blurred. But Kalen's heartbeat grew stronger, steadier. The bond was working, diluting the poison between them, giving them both a chance. Varia felt herself slipping, darkness creeping in. But she'd bought them time. Enough time for healers to arrive, for antidotes to be administered, for hands pressed against her skin. Magic flooded through her. Not Calyx's magic, but something older, stronger. She forced her eyes open and saw Thessa kneeling beside her, power radiating from the bondweaver's hands. Stubborn children, Thessa muttered. Trying to die before you've even properly enjoyed being bonded. Her magic poured into both of them, burning away the poison, knitting wounds, forcing life back into failing systems. The pain receded slowly. Varia's heartbeat synchronized with Kalen's, both weak, but steady, growing stronger. When she could finally breathe without agony, she looked down. Kalen's eyes were open, silver and furious and alive. You could have died, he rasped. So could you. I chose not to let that happen. Varia. Don't. If you're about to lecture me about taking risks with my life, remember that you literally threw yourself in front of a poison blade for me. She managed a weak smile. We're bonded now. Your suicidal protective instincts are my suicidal protective instincts. Despite everything, he almost laughed, then pulled her down into a kiss that tasted of blood and relief and desperate love. Never again, he whispered against her lips. Never scare me like that again. Same to you. Around them, the battle was ending. Tarian's forces, seeing their leader dead and the king alive, began surrendering. The courtyard filled with the sounds of weapons being dropped, wounded being tended, survivors trying to process what had just happened. Fenric appeared, helping both Kalen and Varia to their feet. The palace is secure. All assassins are either dead or captured. The coalition delegates are safe. He paused. Your Majesty, you should know, they saw everything. Saw you take the blade meant for Varia. Saw her kill Tarian, and then nearly die saving you. And, Kalen asked, and Ambassador Ridian asked me to convey his message. Fenric's expression was complicated. He said any king willing to die protecting an Omega, and any Omega capable of single-handedly defeating a House Alpha to save her mate are exactly the kind of leaders the Five Kingdoms need. He smiled slightly. I think you just won the summit before it even started. Varia looked at Kalen, feeling his exhaustion, his relief, his love through their bond. We did it.
We survived.
That's not the same as winning. It's close enough for tonight. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her waist, keeping her steady. Tomorrow we can worry about politics. Tonight, let's just be grateful we're both alive.
Deal.
They stood together in the blood-stained courtyard, bonded and battered but unbroken, while around them, the palace slowly came back to life. The summit would happen in 2 days. Questions would be asked. Alliances would shift. The future remained uncertain. But Kalen and Varia had proven something more important than political superiority. They'd proven that a bond built on trust, courage, and love could survive anything. Even poison meant to destroy them both. Chapter 9. The morning after the attack dawned cold and clear. Varia woke in Kalen's chambers. Their chambers now, she supposed, since the bond made sleeping apart physically uncomfortable. Her body ached from wounds and poison, but she was alive. They both were. Kalen's arm was wrapped around her waist, his chest pressed against her back, his breath warm on her neck. Through the bond, she felt his restless sleep, the nightmares playing beneath his consciousness. Images of her dying, of the poison consuming them both, of losing what they'd just found. She turned in his arms, pressing her hand against his chest. His heartbeat steadied immediately, the nightmares receding. Silver eyes opened, focusing on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Morning," she whispered. "You're still here." His voice was rough with sleep and residual fear. "Where else would I be?"
Gone. Dead.
"A dream I had while dying." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone like he was memorizing her features. "Last night was terrifying, brutal, too close." Varia covered his hand with hers. "But we survived. Together. You shouldn't have had to nearly die to save me. And you shouldn't have thrown yourself in front of a poison blade. So, I guess we're both terrible at self-preservation." She managed to smile. "Good thing we have each other to keep us alive." Before Kalen could respond, someone pounded on the door. "Your Majesty," Calix's voice urgent. "You need to get up. The Southern Coalition representatives are demanding an audience. Now." Kalen groaned but sat up, wincing at wounds still healing. "How long do we have?" "They're already in the throne room. I've stalled them as long as I can. Give us 10 minutes. You have 5. The door closed. Kalen and Varia looked at each other. "So much for a peaceful morning," Varia muttered. "Welcome to being queen." Kalen stood, offering his hand.
Come on.
"Let's go face the vultures." 5 minutes later, they entered the throne room. Varia wore formal attire hastily selected by Calix, deep blue that complemented the silver of her mate Mark, which was prominently displayed. No hiding what they were now. Kalen wore his crown and full royal regalia, every inch the Alpha King despite the pallor of his skin and the carefully concealed weakness in his step. The coalition delegates were indeed waiting. All 5 of them, 3 who'd survived the attack, plus 2 more who'd apparently arrived overnight with reinforcements. Ambassador Ridian stood at the front, his dark eyes assessing. Beside him was an older woman Varia didn't recognize, gray-haired and regal, radiating power that made the air itself seem heavier. "Your Majesty," Ridian began. "Allow me to introduce High Chancellor Noriel of the Southern Coalition Council. She arrived this morning to personally assess the situation." "High Chancellor." Kalen bowed slightly, acknowledgement of rank without submission. "Your presence honors us, though I wish it were under better circumstances." "As do I." Noriel's voice was measured, controlled. 3 of my delegates were nearly assassinated on your soil, King Kalen. The summit is meant to begin tomorrow. I'm sure you understand why the council has concerns. I understand completely. An attack of this magnitude represents a catastrophic security failure. Kaelin's expression remained neutral. However, I believe the circumstances deserve full explanation before judgment is passed. I'm listening. Kaelin gestured to Fenric, who stepped forward carrying a leather satchel. From it, he removed documents, correspondence, maps, evidence gathered throughout the night from Tyrion's quarters and the captured assassins. House Shadowmere was infiltrated by the divided kingdom faction, Kaelin began. A group dedicated to ensuring North and South remain in eternal conflict. They orchestrated the Borderlands attacks, not to weaken my control, but to sabotage the summit itself. He spread the documents across the table. Varia moved closer, seeing correspondence between Tyrion and unknown contacts, payment records for assassins, detailed plans for the attack. Their goal was never territorial gain, Kaelin continued. It was chaos. They wanted the delegates killed on northern soil, ensuring the summit would collapse and relations between our territories would shatter permanently. These could be fabricated, one of the other delegates challenged. They're not. Ambassador Vea spoke up, surprising everyone. During the attack, I heard the assassins speaking. They referenced the eternal divide and preserving the old ways. At the time, I thought it was random zealotry. But combined with this evidence, she gestured to the documents. It supports King Kaelin's theory. Furthermore, Rydian added, I witnessed the king take a poisoned blade meant for Lady Varia. Witnessed her kill the traitor Alpha and then nearly die transferring the poison through their bond to save the king's life. His expression was grave. That's not the behavior of wolves orchestrating political theater. That's genuine devotion. High Chancellor Noriel studied Varia with sharp intelligence. You're bonded. Truly bonded, not just politically allied. Yes, High Chancellor, Varia said, meeting her gaze steadily. As of last night, the ceremony was completed just before the attack. Convenient timing. Terrible timing, actually, Varia corrected. The attack interrupted what should have been. She felt heat rise in her cheeks.
Well,
it was interrupted. Despite the tension, Noriel's lips twitched. I see. She turned back to Kaelin. Your Majesty, the evidence is compelling. However, the fact remains that my delegates were endangered. The Coalition Council will need assurances that the summit can proceed safely. You have my word that every remaining member of the divided kingdom faction will be rooted out, Kaelin said. Fenric has already begun interrogating the captured assassins. We're identifying their contacts, their funding sources, anyone who supported them. Your word is noted. But words are cheap, King Kaelin. I need proof of commitment. Noriel's eyes gleamed. The summit's purpose is to discuss unified governance of the Borderlands. Protection for all wolves regardless of designation or territory. You've claimed this as your priority. Prove it.
how?
Open the summit to Omega representatives. Silence crashed through the throne room. Several northern advisors looked scandalized. Even Calyx's eyebrows rose. Explain, Kaelin said carefully. If this summit is truly about protecting all wolves, then all wolves should have a voice. Not just alphas and their chosen delegates. Noriel gestured to Varia. You've made your maiden Omega, claiming she's your equal. Let her speak at the summit. Let other Omegas speak. Show the 5 kingdoms that this isn't just political posturing, that you're genuinely committed to change. It was brilliant and dangerous in equal measure. Allowing Omegas to speak at a summit traditionally reserved for alphas would be revolutionary. It would also enrage half the northern houses and make Kaelin look weak to traditionalists. But refusing would make everything they'd claimed about equality, about protection, about Varia mattering, look like lies. Through the bond, Varia felt Kaelin's racing thoughts, his strategic calculations. She sent him one clear emotion agreement. Done, Kaelin said. Omega representatives will be invited to speak. Lady Varia will address the summit directly. Anyone else who wishes to testify about conditions in their territories will be heard. Shock rippled through the room. Noriel smiled. Genuine approval. Then the summit proceeds as scheduled, she announced. Tomorrow at dawn, we convene to discuss the future of the Borderlands and, perhaps, the future of how we treat all wolves under our governance. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Your Majesty. That bond of yours, the way you fought together, protected each other, nearly died for each other. Her expression softened fractionally. That's what unity looks like. Remember that when you're at the negotiating table. The 5 kingdoms need that kind of devotion from their leaders. When the coalition delegates left, the throne room erupted in argument. Your Majesty, you can't seriously let Omegas speak at the summit. An advisor sputtered. It's unprecedented. Scandalous. The northern houses will adapt. Kalen cut him off coldly. Or they'll leave. I'm done catering to wolves who think strength is determined by designation rather than character. But dismissed. All of you. I need to speak with my mate privately. The throne room cleared quickly. When they were alone, Kalen sagged slightly, his exhaustion showing. That was risky, Varia said. That was necessary. He moved to her, hands finding her waist. Noriel backed me into a corner, but she was right. If we're claiming to fight for equality, we need to prove it. And you, his forehead pressed to hers. You need to be at that summit. Your voice matters more than any alpha's political maneuvering. What if I fail? What if I speak and make things worse? You won't. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Because you've already proven yourself a dozen times over. His hands tightened. You stood before the northern houses and didn't break. You killed an alpha to save me. You took poison into your own body rather than watch me die. Varia, if anyone can show the 5 kingdoms what Omegas are capable of, it's you. Fear and pride warred in her chest. I don't know what to say. Tell them the truth. Tell them about Silverpine, about the attacks, about what it's like to be invisible in a world that only values power. His voice roughened. Tell them why change is necessary. Make them feel it. And if they don't listen? Then we tried. But Varia, he pulled back, meeting her eyes. I think they will listen. I think you're going to change everything. The rest of the day was chaos. Word spread quickly that Omegas would be allowed to speak at the summit. Reactions ranged from cautious optimism to outright fury. 3 northern houses sent messages demanding private audiences with Kalen. 2 more threatened to boycott the summit entirely. Kalen met with each, and Varia listened through their bond as he navigated the treacherous political waters, offering concessions where he could, standing firm where he couldn't, using every tool at his disposal to keep the fragile coalition together. Meanwhile, Varia worked with Calyx to identify other Omegas who might speak at the summit. They found 4 willing to testify, wolves from different territories, each with stories of abuse, exploitation, and survival. They're terrified, Calyx said as they reviewed the list. Speaking publicly against the pack system that's oppressed them their entire lives, it takes tremendous courage. Or tremendous desperation, Varia replied. Maybe both. That evening, Kalen gathered everyone who would speak. Varia, the 4 Omega volunteers, Fenric, Calyx, and several trusted advisors. They met in a private study, away from prying eyes and listening ears. Tomorrow will be difficult, Kalen began. The northern houses will try to discredit you. The coalition will test whether our commitment is genuine. Traditionalists will call this an abomination. He looked at each Omega in turn. I need you to understand the risks. Speaking tomorrow makes you targets. For every wolf who supports change, there's another who benefits from the current system and will fight to preserve it. We understand. One of the Omegas, a woman named Airless, said quietly. But, Your Majesty, we're already targets. We've always been targets. At least tomorrow, we get to fight back with words instead of just surviving. Kalen's expression shifted to something like pride. Then, let's prepare. Tell me your stories. All of them. The summit needs to hear truth, raw and unfiltered. For the next 3 hours, Varia listened to stories that made her heart break. Airless, sold by her pack to settle a debt. Sable, whose children had been taken because she was deemed unfit to raise them. Aurelia, who'd been beaten for daring to learn to read. Each story was a wound. Each voice, a weapon they'd wield tomorrow. When it was Varia's turn, she told them about Silverpine, about watching her settlement burn, about the children's screams, about telling a rogue to slit her throat because death seemed preferable to more loss. But then I survived, she said, her voice steady. And I realized survival isn't enough. We need to live. We need to matter. We need to be seen as more than property or problems to be managed. Silence filled the study. Then Kalen spoke, his voice rough with emotion. Tomorrow, you'll be seen. I promise you that. And anyone who tries to silence you will answer me. That night, unable to sleep, Various stood on the balcony of their chambers, staring at stars that seemed impossibly distant. Kalen found her there, wrapping a fur around her shoulders against the cold. Nervous? He asked. Terrified, she admitted. What if I'm not enough? What if my words don't matter? Your words always matter. He turned her to face him. But Varia, I need you to understand something. Whatever happens tomorrow, whether the summit succeeds or fails, whether we win concessions or face backlash, none of it changes what we've already accomplished. What have we accomplished? Tarian's dead, but the divided kingdom still exists. The borderlands are still disputed. Omegas are still. You're alive, Kalen interrupted fiercely. You're standing here, wearing my mark, about to address the most powerful wolves in the 5 kingdoms. You went from being invisible to being undeniable. That matters, Varia. That's already changed things. For me, not for the others. It starts with one. It always starts with one. His hands framed her face. You're the beginning of something larger. A crack in a wall that's stood for centuries. Tomorrow you make that crack wider. And eventually, the whole damn wall comes down. Tears pricked her eyes. You have too much faith in me. I have exactly the right amount of faith in you. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. Now come to bed. Tomorrow we change the world. Tonight we will rest. They returned to their chambers, to their bed, to each other's arms. And for a few precious hours, they forgot about politics and danger and the impossible task ahead. They were just 2 souls, bonded and grateful to be alive, holding each other in the darkness before dawn. Tomorrow, everything will change. Tonight, they had each other. Chapter 10. The summit began at dawn. The great hall had been transformed. 12 massive tables arranged in a circle, each bearing the sigil of a different territory, the 6 northern houses, the 5 southern coalition regions, and 1 table marked neutral for mediators and special witnesses. Hundreds of wolves filled the gallery above, watching from behind spelled glass that allowed them to observe, but not interfere. Every major pack in the 5 kingdoms had sent representatives. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Varia stood in the preparation chamber, her reflection staring back from a full-length mirror. She wore deep burgundy, Kalen's color, marking her clearly as his mate. But Calix had insisted on adding silver embroidery and patterns that told a story, wolves running free, chains breaking, new growth emerging from burned ground. It's a statement, Calix had said. Every thread is a message. Now, looking at herself, Varia understood. She wasn't just representing herself. She was representing every Omega who'd ever been silenced, broken, told they didn't matter. The weight of it threatened to crush her. Breathe, Kalen said from behind her. He'd been reviewing documents, but now he set them aside and moved to her. His hands settled on her shoulders, grounding. You're ready. I don't feel ready. No one ever does. But you'll be magnificent anyway. Through the bond, she felt his absolute confidence in her. It steadied something wild and panicked in her chest. A knock. Fenric entered. They're calling for the opening procession. Your Majesty, it's time. Kalen offered his arm. Together? Always, Varia whispered, taking it. They walked through corridors lined with warriors, through doors that opened onto the great hall, into a wall of sound, gasps, murmurs, the rustle of hundreds of wolves turning to watch. Kalen led her to the northern table, but instead of seating her in a lower chair, where mates traditionally sat, he pulled out the chair directly beside his own. Equal height, equal position. The message was clear. She wasn't an accessory. She was his partner. Shock rippled through the hall. Several Northern House alphas looked outraged. Iskira's face went red with fury. But High Chancellor Noriel smiled from the Southern Coalition table, approval evident. Let the summit begin, called the neutral mediator, an ancient wolf named Lorcan who'd overseen territorial disputes for half a century. His voice carried despite his age. We gather to address the question of the borderlands and the protection of all wolves within contested territories. He went through the formalities, acknowledging each house, each coalition region, reviewing the agenda. Varia only half listened, her attention caught by the Omegas seated at the neutral table. Airless, Sable, Aurelia, and one more, a male Omega named Selim, who'd arrived last night with burns covering half his body from a disciplinary measure in his pack. They looked terrified, but they'd come anyway. Before we begin formal negotiations, Lorcan continued, King Kalen has requested special testimony be heard. An unprecedented inclusion, but given recent events, this mediator finds it relevant. He gestured to Kalen. Your Majesty. Kalen stood, and the hall fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. For centuries, we've made decisions about wolves without including all wolves in the conversation. We've structured our society around power, who has it, who deserves it, who's entitled to speak and be heard. His silver eyes swept the hall. But power without wisdom is just tyranny. And we've been tyrants long enough. Murmurs of agreement and dissent. The Borderlands attacks targeted Omega settlements specifically. Not because Omegas are weak, but because someone knew their suffering would be ignored. That their deaths wouldn't matter enough to prevent conflict. Kalen's voice hardened. They were wrong. Every life matters. Every voice deserves to be heard. Which is why today, Omegas will speak directly to this summit about conditions we've allowed to persist for too long. This is outrageous. An alpha from House Winterfong, not Iskira but one of her allies, stood. Omegas don't have the political understanding to. To what? Varia surprised herself by standing. To speak about their own lives? To describe the abuse they've endured under the system you benefit from? The alpha sputtered. You're out of line. I'm out of line? Varia's voice rang clear. I watched children burn. Watched families destroyed. All because someone decided Omega settlements were acceptable collateral damage in political games. And you think I'm out of line for wanting to speak about it? Lady Varia has the floor, Lorcan announced. The objection is noted and overruled. Proceed. Varia's heart hammered. This was it. Her moment to make everything matter. She looked at Kalen, who nodded. Then she turned to face the assembled power of the 5 kingdoms. My name is Varia of Silverpine, she began. 3 weeks ago, my settlement was attacked by rogues. 12 families died. I survived because King Kalen arrived in time to stop the executioner's blade. She paused, letting that sink in. I was the 4th Omega settlement attacked that month. The 4th. And until King Kalen started investigating, no one noticed. No one cared. Silence. She had their attention. You want to know why the Borderlands are unstable? Because half the population has no stake in stability. Omegas work, bleed, die to keep packs functioning. But we have no voice, no protection, no reason to support a system that treats us as disposable. Her voice grew stronger. The divided kingdom knew this. They targeted us specifically because they understood what you refuse to acknowledge, that you can't build a stable kingdom on oppression. These are exaggerations. Another alpha called out. Omegas are protected by their packs. Protected? Varia's laugh was bitter. Shall I call my fellow witnesses? Let them describe what protection looks like in your territories. She gestured to the neutral table. One by one the Omegas stood. Airless spoke first, her voice shaking but clear. I was sold to settle my alpha's gambling debt. Sold like property. The pack I was given to kept me chained for 6 months until I learned obedience. Sable next. My children were taken because I dared question pack decisions. I haven't seen them in 3 years. The alpha said an Omega couldn't raise proper wolves. Aurelia. I was beaten for learning to read. My alpha said education made Omegas dangerous and gave us ideas above our station. Finally, Selim. He removed his shirt, showing the burns covering his torso. This is what happened when I refused an unwanted mating. My alpha called it correction. The healers called it torture. But no one stopped it because I'm just an omega. The great hall erupted. Some wolves looked genuinely shocked. Others are defensive. A few appeared ashamed. High Chancellor Noriel stood. These testimonies support what the Southern Coalition has long suspected, that the Northern Territories have systemic abuses that destabilize the region. How can we discuss unified borderlands governance when basic protections don't exist? The South is hardly innocent, Iskira snapped. Your territories have their own issues, which we're addressing through reform, Noriel countered. Whereas the North continues to pretend everything is fine while Omegas burn. The argument escalated. Voices rising, accusations flying. Varia felt the summit slipping away, devolving into the same territorial disputes that had prevented progress for decades. She looked at Kalen, who was watching the chaos with calculating eyes. Through the bond, she felt his frustration. This wasn't working. The testimony had shocked them, but shock wasn't enough to create change. They needed something stronger. Varia stood on her chair. Enough. Her voice cut through the noise. You're doing exactly what the divided kingdom wanted, fighting amongst yourselves instead of addressing the real problem. And what is the real problem? Iskira demanded. Fear. Varia met her gaze directly. You're afraid that giving Omega's rights means losing your power. You're afraid that treating us as equals diminishes your authority. You're afraid of change. She turned, addressing the entire hall. But let me ask you something. What are you more afraid of? Change, or watching your territories tear themselves apart while your enemies exploit the wounds you refuse to heal? Silence. The borderlands are burning because you've ignored the suffering in your own houses. You can't protect territories when half your population has no reason to support you. You can't build unity on oppression. Varia's voice dropped, but somehow carried further. But you can choose differently.
Today. Right now.
You can decide that power isn't about dominance. It's about responsibility. That protecting wolves means all wolves, not just the ones you deem worthy. She stepped down from the chair, her legs shaking but her voice steady. So, here's what I'm proposing. A treaty. Not just about the borderlands, but about fundamental rights. Every Omega gets fair wages, safe working conditions, the right to refuse unwanted bonds, legal recourse for abuse. Protection that's real, not theoretical. She looked at each table in turn. In exchange, Omegas pledge loyalty to the unified territories. We support stability because we have a stake in it. We defend the borderlands because they're ours too. That's an alpha started. Revolutionary, High Chancellor Noriel finished, her eyes gleaming. And exactly what the Five Kingdoms need. She stood. The Southern Coalition supports this proposal. We'll sign a treaty guaranteeing Omega rights in exchange for unified borderlands governance. Shock rippled through the northern tables. Kalen stood slowly, and Varia felt his pride and love surge through their bond. The Northern Wastes support this proposal as well, he announced. Any house that wishes to remain in good standing will ratify the treaty. Those who refuse, his smile was sharp, will find themselves excluded from borderlands trade, resource sharing, and military protection. It was a gamble. A massive one. He was essentially forcing the northern houses to choose, adapt or be isolated. One by one, alphas began standing. Not all of them. Not Iskira, who sat rigid with fury. Not 3 other houses who clearly opposed any change. But 7 of the 12 northern houses stood, acknowledging their support. A majority. Barely, but enough. Then let it be recorded, Lorcan announced, his ancient face showing something like approval. The summit proposes a treaty, the Borderlands Protection Act. Unified governance of disputed territories in exchange for guaranteed Omega rights across all participating regions. He paused. We'll draft formal language today. Vote tomorrow. But pending no major objections, he smiled. I believe we've just witnessed history. The Great Hall erupted in noise, some celebrating, some protesting, everyone talking at once. Varia sank into her chair, exhaustion and relief flooding through her. She'd done it. They'd actually done it. Kaelin's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. Through the bond, his emotions poured into her. Pride, love, gratitude, awe. "You magnificent, terrifying woman," his voice in her mind. "You just changed the 5 kingdoms. We changed them. Together." Together, he agreed. But even in victory, Varia felt unease prickling at the back of her mind. She scanned the hall, looking for the source of her discomfort.
There.
In the gallery above, a figure in a hooded cloak, watching from the shadows. Something about their posture, their stillness, set off every alarm in her body. She squeezed Kaelin's hand, directing his attention upward. He saw the figure too, his body tensing immediately. The figure tilted their head in what might have been a salute. Then they turned and disappeared into the crowd. "Fenric," Kaelin said quietly. The gallery. Someone was watching. Hooded cloak, northeast corner. The beta moved immediately, warriors following. But Varia knew they wouldn't find anything. That figure had been a message, not a threat they could capture. "The divided kingdom," she murmured. "Some of them are still out there. Still planning." Kaelin's jaw clenched. "This isn't over." "No," Varia agreed. "But we won today. We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes." The summit recessed for the day, delegates breaking into smaller groups to discuss treaty details. Varia was immediately surrounded by Omegas from various territories, some crying, some thanking her, some asking how they could help push for change in their own regions. She spoke with each one, exhausted but determined. This was what mattered. Not the political maneuvering, but the wolves whose lives would actually change because of what happened today. Hours later, when the great hall finally emptied, Kaelin found her sitting alone at the neutral table, staring at nothing. "Come on," he said gently. "You need rest. I need to make sure this actually happens. A vote tomorrow doesn't guarantee." "Varia." He pulled her to her feet, hands framing her face. "You did everything you could. More than anyone expected. Now, let others carry some of the weight. But, no buts. You're exhausted. The bond is fraying from stress. If you don't rest, you'll collapse, and then you'll be useless tomorrow when we need you sharp for the final vote." His voice softened. "Please, let me take care of you." The concern in his eyes, the love pouring through their connection, broke through her resistance. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." He led her back to their chambers, helped her out of the formal clothes, and drew her a bath. Took care of her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Later, wrapped in soft robes in his arms, Varia finally let herself believe it might actually work. "We're going to win this," she said. "Yes," Kaelin agreed. "But Varia, that figure in the gallery, the threat isn't gone." "I know. Which means we need to be careful, vigilant. The divided kingdom will try something. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually. Eventually, we'll face them together. Like we face everything." She turned in his arms. "And we'll win. Because that's what we do." He kissed her, soft and lingering. "I love you. I know we haven't said it explicitly, but I love you too," Varia interrupted. "Have for a while now. It just took me time to realize it." They held each other as night fell over Frostholm, as stars emerged above the mountains, as the world slowly spun toward an uncertain future. Tomorrow, they'd vote on a treaty that could change everything. Tomorrow, enemies will plot their downfall. Tomorrow, the real work will begin. But tonight, they had each other, their bond, and the knowledge that they'd already accomplished the impossible. Everything else was just details. Chapter 11. The vote was scheduled for noon. Varia woke to find Kaelin already gone, a note on his pillow, emergency meeting with northern houses. Some are wavering. Back soon.
K.
Through the bond, she felt his tension, the careful diplomacy he was employing to keep fractious alphas from bolting before the vote. She sent him waves of confidence, support, and love. His gratitude rippled back, warm and fierce. Varia dressed quickly and headed to the neutral table where the other Omegas had gathered. They'd spend the night in guest quarters, afraid to return to their territories before the treaty was secured. Lady Varia, Airless, greeted her. The woman looked exhausted but hopeful. Is it true? Some houses are threatening to withdraw support. Some are wavering, Varia admitted. But Kaelin won't let them derail this. Not after yesterday. What if they vote no? Sable's voice was small, frightened. What if we spoke up for nothing? Then we spoke up anyway. That matters. Varia sat beside her. But it won't come to that. We have the numbers. The coalition supports us, 7 northern houses committed publicly. Even if a few waves, we'll have enough. She hoped she was right. The morning dragged endlessly. Varia reviewed her notes, prepared remarks in case she needed to speak again, and tried to ignore the mounting anxiety. At 11, Calyx appeared, her expression grim. We have a problem. Varia's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? 2 northern houses just declared they're abstaining from the vote. Not voting no, abstaining. Which means we might not have a majority anymore. Varia's mind raced. Who? House Stormcrest and House Ravenclaw. Both claimed they needed more time to consider the implications. Silas is abstaining? He seemed supportive yesterday. He was. Until someone got to him last night. Calyx's glacial eyes were furious. Someone's buying votes, Varia. Offering deals, threatening consequences. The divided kingdom is making a last push to kill this treaty. Through the bond, Varia felt Kaelin's rage spike, then forcibly controlled. He was in the meeting hearing the same news. Can we sway them back? She asked through their connection. Working on it. But I need ammunition. Something that makes abstaining more costly than supporting us. What do you need?
You.
They need to hear from you again. Personal appeal, not political maneuvering. Varia stood immediately. Take me to them. Varia, that's. Take me.
Now.
Calyx studied her for a moment, then nodded. This way. House Stormcrest and House Ravenclaw had commandeered a private meeting room. Varia entered without knocking, Calyx at her back. Alpha Silas looked up, surprise flickering across his weathered face. Alpha Xavian of House Ravenclaw, younger, sharper-eyed, frowned. Lady Varia, Silas said carefully. This is a private. I know what this is. It's cowardice. Varia's voice was flat. You're abstaining because someone scared you or bought you. Which is it? Xavian's eyes narrowed. Careful, Omega. You may be the king's mate, but what? You'll hurt me? Threaten me? I've survived worse than your posturing. She moved into the room, forcing them to acknowledge her presence. Yesterday you stood.
You committed to change.
Now you're backing down.
Why?
The treaty is too radical, Silas said. Too fast. We need time to what? To find excuses? To convince yourself that maintaining the status quo is safer than evolution. Varia's laugh was bitter. You heard the testimonies. You saw what the current system does to wolves under your protection. And you want more time? We have responsibilities to our packs. You have responsibilities to all wolves in your packs, including the ones you've been systematically oppressing. Varia leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Alpha Silas, you told me I was refreshed, that you appreciated honesty. So here's honesty you're afraid. Afraid that giving Omega's rights means admitting you were wrong. Means accepting that the wolves you've dismissed as weak might actually be strong. That's what this is really about. Silas's jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. Varia turned to Xavian. And you're younger. You inherited House Ravenclaw only 2 years ago. You have a chance to be different from the alphas who came before, to build something better. But instead, you're choosing to be just like them, maintaining cruelty out of tradition and fear. You don't understand the political complexities. I understand perfectly. You're worried about how this looks, about whether other houses will see you as weak for supporting Omega rights, about losing face, losing power, losing control. Varia's voice dropped. But what you're actually losing is the chance to be on the right side of history. Silence filled the room. Both alphas looked uncomfortable, caught between defensive anger and reluctant awareness. The divided kingdom approached you, didn't they? Varia asked softly. Offer you something to abstain from. Maybe territory concessions. Maybe trade advantages. Maybe just threats about what would happen if you supported the treaty. Xavian and Silas exchanged glances. They did, Varia breathed.
Gods.
They're still operating, still manipulating, still trying to destroy any chance at unity. They made compelling arguments, Silas admitted, that this treaty would destabilize everything, that Omegas weren't ready for responsibility, that King Kalen was being led by emotions rather than strategy. And you believed them. I believe they had a point about rushing change. Change has been delayed for centuries. That's not rushing. That's overdue. Varia straightened. But fine. You want guarantees that this won't destabilize your territories? I'll give you one. If this treaty passes, I will personally visit every pack in the northern houses. I'll work with your Omegas, help them transition into new roles, ensure the change is managed rather than chaotic. You'll have support, guidance. You won't be navigating this alone. Xavian paused. That's a significant commitment.
Yes.
Because I believe in this. Because I've lived the alternative and refuse to let it continue. She looked at both alphas. Yesterday, I thought you believed in it too. Was I wrong? Another long silence. Then Silas sighed, running a hand through his gray-streaked hair.
No.
You weren't wrong. He stood slowly. House Stormcrest will vote yes. Not because of threats or bribes, but because you're right. Change is overdue. And if you're willing to help manage that transition, he inclined his head, then I'm willing to support it. Xavian hesitated longer, conflict written across his face. Finally, House Ravenclaw votes yes as well. But Lady Varia, if this goes badly, if territories destabilize, then we fix it. Together. Varia offered her hand. That's what unity means. Not perfection, but partnership. Xavian took her hand, his grip firm. Partners, then. When Varia left the meeting room, Calyx was grinning. That was masterful. You appealed to their pride, their fear, and their better natures all at once. I just told them the truth. Varia's legs felt shaky now that the adrenaline was fading. Will it be enough? With those two back, we have the votes. Barely, but enough. Calyx's expression turned serious. But Varia, you just committed to visiting every northern pack. Do you understand how dangerous that is? How much travel, how many hostile territories? I understand. And I'll do it anyway. Through the bond, she felt Kalen's approach. Because this can't just be words on paper. It has to be real.
Lived.
Proven. Kalen appeared around the corner, Fenric behind him. The moment he saw Varia, relief flooded the bond. You got them back, he said. We got them back. By promising I'd personally oversee implementation. His expression shifted to concern. Varia, that's months of travel. Potentially years. Through territories that might still be hostile. I know. But it's what's needed. She took his hands. Kalen, we can't ask for change and then abandon wolves to figure it out alone. Someone has to be there, showing them it's possible. Might as well be me. He studied her face, then pulled her close. Then I'm coming with you. Everywhere you go, I go. You're a king. You can't just abandon Frostholm for months. I'm a king who learned his kingdom extends beyond palace walls. If my mate is traveling to ensure our treaty succeeds, I'll be beside her. Non-negotiable. Through the bond, Varia felt his absolute determination. She also felt his fear, not for himself, but for her. The understanding that putting themselves in vulnerable positions invited attack. The divided kingdom will come for us, she said quietly. Let them. We'll be ready. Fenric cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt, but the vote is in 30 minutes. Should probably head to the Great Hall. Noon arrived with painful slowness. The Great Hall filled again, every seat occupied, the gallery packed with observers. Varia sat beside Kalen at the northern table, her hand in his beneath the table, their bond humming with shared tension. Lorcan called the summit to order. We gather for the final vote on the Borderlands Protection Act, a treaty guaranteeing unified governance of disputed territories in exchange for mandated Omega rights across all participating regions. His ancient eyes swept the hall. This is a historic moment. Whatever the outcome, it will shape the Five Kingdoms for generations. He read through the treaty's key provisions: fair wages, safe conditions, right to refuse bonds, legal protections, and more. Each clause was a victory Varia had barely dare hope for. Now, Lorcan announced, the vote. Each region will declare their position. Southern Coalition? High Chancellor Noriel stood. The 5 coalition regions vote unanimously yes. Northern houses? One by one, Alpha stood. House Stormcrest, yes. House Ravenclaw, yes. 5 others, yes. 7 total. Then Iskira of House Winterfang rose. House Winterfang votes no. This treaty is an abomination that undermines centuries of successful governance. We will not participate in this foolishness. 3 other houses echoed her refusal. 4 numbers: 7 yes from the north, 5 from the south. 12 yes votes total. For no votes. A clear majority. The motion passes, Lorcan declared. The Borderlands Protection Act is hereby ratified. All participating territories will implement its provisions within 6 months. Penalties for non-compliance will be enforced by joint Northern-Southern oversight. The Great Hall erupted in cheers and protests. Varia felt tears streaming down her face, felt Kaelin's overwhelming emotion through their bond. Pride, relief, love. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd actually done it. But even in victory, Varia's gaze found the gallery. Searching for hooded figures, for hidden threats, for the enemies she knew were still watching. She found nothing, but absence of visible threat didn't mean absence of danger. They're planning something, she sent through the bond. I know, Kaelin replied. Let them plan. We'll be ready. The celebration that night was subdued, everyone too exhausted for true revelry. Varia spent hours speaking with Omegas from various territories, explaining what the treaty meant, what would change, what they could expect. Near midnight, she finally escaped to the quiet of a palace garden. She needed air, space, a moment to process everything that had happened. She found Calyx there, staring at the stars. You did well today, the advisor said without turning. Better than well. You changed the world. We'll see if it lasts.
It will.
Because you're not the type to let it fail. Calyx finally looked at her. But you should know something. The figure in the gallery, yesterday, we identified them. Varia's breath caught. Who? One of Lisette's descendants. The woman we found in the dungeons. Calyx's expression was grim. Apparently, she had a daughter before she was imprisoned. That daughter had children. One of them was in the gallery. Watching. Watching for what? That's the question. Calyx handed her a note, paper yellowed with age. This was left in your chambers. The guards didn't see who delivered it. Varia unfolded the note. The handwriting was spidery, ancient. The king's father imprisoned those who loved against political convenience. The son claims to be different. Prove it. Or become what you claim to oppose. It's a warning, Varia breathed. Or a test. Calyx took the note back. Either way, they're watching. Waiting to see if this treaty is real or just pretty words. Then we make it real. We keep our promises. We don't become monsters. Easier said than done when ruling requires hard choices. Maybe. But that's what the bond is for. Kaelin keeps me grounded. I keep him from becoming his father. Varia smiled slightly. We balance each other. Let's hope that's enough. They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars well overhead, both knowing that the real work was just beginning. Inside the palace, Kaelin dealt with the aftermath. Angry houses, demands for exceptions, the endless complexity of implementation. Through the bond, Varia felt his exhaustion and sent him strength. He sent back love, gratitude, and determination. Tomorrow, they'd begin the real work, visiting territories, enforcing the treaty, proving that change was possible. Tomorrow, enemies will test them. The divided kingdom wouldn't accept defeat quietly. Tomorrow, everything became real. But tonight, they'd won something impossible. A treaty. A chance.
Hope.
And for wolves who'd spent their lives with none of those things, hope was revolution enough. Chapter 12. 3 months later, Varia stood in the ruins of what had once been Silverpine. She'd returned to the borderlands with Kaelin as promised, traveling from territory to territory, implementing the treaty's provisions. It had been exhausting, dangerous, and occasionally heartbreaking. But it was working.
Slowly.
Painfully. But working. Now, standing where her settlement had burned, Varia felt the weight of everything that had changed since that terrible night. "You don't have to do this," Kaelin said quietly beside her. "We can go somewhere else too."
No.
"This is the right place." Varia knelt, placing flowers on ground where ash had finally given way to new grass. Small green shoots, defiant against the scorched earth. They deserved to be remembered here, where they lived, where they mattered. Around them, a small group had gathered. Omegas from neighboring settlements who'd survived similar attacks. Warriors from Kaelin's guard who'd helped hunt the remaining divided kingdom cells. And surprisingly, 3 alphas from northern houses come to pay respects. Change, Varia thought. Slow but real. She spoke the names of the dead. All of them. Every family, every child, every elder. Her voice cracked on some. The children she'd sung to sleep, the women who'd taught her to survive, the men who'd tried to protect them all and died in the attempt. When she finished, Kaelin added his own words. "These wolves were citizens of the Northern Wastes. Under my protection, I failed them." His voice was raw. "That failure will haunt me forever. But their deaths won't be meaningless. Because of them, because of what happened here, things are changing. Omegas across the 5 kingdoms have rights now. Protection. A future." He placed his own flowers beside Varia's. "That's their legacy. And I swear on this ground that we'll honor it. Every day. For however long we're given." Silence settled over the ruins. Then one by one, others came forward, adding flowers, speaking names, acknowledging loss. When it was done, Varia stood, Kaelin's hand finding hers. "Ready to go?" he asked. "One more thing." She walked to the edge of the settlement, where a massive oak had somehow survived the fire. Its trunk was blackened, branches bare on one side, but the other side showed new growth. Green leaves against charred wood. Varia pulled out a small bag of seeds, wildflowers native to the borderlands. She'd been carrying them since they started their journey. "For new growth," she said, planting them around the oak's base. "Something beautiful from something terrible." Kaelin knelt beside her, helping press seeds into soil. Through the bond, she felt his love, his pride, his absolute conviction that she was the strongest person he'd ever known. "I'm not strong," she sent me back. "I'm just stubborn." "Same thing," he replied, warmth flooding through their connection. That evening, they camped at the borderland's edge, where northern and southern territories met. Tomorrow, they'd cross into coalition lands to continue implementation there. Varia sat by the fire, reviewing reports. The numbers were encouraging, pack after pack reporting successful integration of Omega rights. Some resistance remained, particularly in remote territories, but overall, progress was undeniable. "You're frowning," Kaelin observed, settling beside her with 2 cups of something hot. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. That's what worries me." Varia accepted the cup, savoring its warmth. 3 months of implementation, and we've had surprisingly few major incidents. Some grumbling, some isolated resistance, but no coordinated opposition. "You're complaining about success?" "I'm suspicious of it. The divided kingdom doesn't just give up. Tyrion's death, the failed summit attack, those were setbacks, not defeats." She met his gaze. "They're planning something. I can feel it." Through the bond, Kaelin's concern matched hers. "Fenric's intelligence network hasn't found anything concrete. But you're right. The quiet is unnatural. they should be fighting back harder. Unless they're waiting for something, building to something bigger. Then we stay vigilant. Keep our guard up. Don't get comfortable. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. But Varia, don't let paranoia steal the victory we've actually achieved. You've changed hundreds of lives these past months. That matters, regardless of what our enemies are planning. She leaned into him, watching flames dance. How many more territories before we've covered them all? 15. Maybe 6 more months of travel. And then we return to Frostholm. Consolidate gains. Deal with whatever the divided kingdom throws at us. He paused. And maybe, if we're very lucky, have some time to just be mates instead of revolutionaries. The longing in his voice made her smile. You miss having a bed that doesn't move when the wind blows? I miss privacy. And baths. And not constantly looking over my shoulder for assassins. His hand found hers. But mostly, I miss having time with you that isn't scheduled, strategic, or politically necessary. Just us. When this is over, we'll have that. I promise. You can't promise that. Not with enemies still circling. Then I'll fight to make it true. She turned, framing his face with her hands. Kaelin, we've survived everything thrown at us. Poison, assassins, political warfare, 3 months of grueling implementation. We'll survive whatever comes next too. He kissed her, deep and desperate, like he could anchor himself to her through sheer force of will. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. I love you, he whispered, more than I thought I could love anything. And that terrifies me, because it means I have so much to lose. You're not going to lose me. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Because I'm too stubborn to die, and you're too protective to let me. She smiled. We're going to grow old together, Kaelin. Going to see the 5 kingdoms transform. Going to tell our children. She stopped, surprised by her own words. Children? Kaelin pulled back, eyes wide. Maybe? Eventually? Varia felt heat rise in her cheeks. I mean, we've never discussed it, but bonded mates usually. I want children with you. The words tumbled out of him. Gods, I want everything with you. Children, decades, a future I stopped believing in years ago. His hands tightened on her waist. But not yet. Not until it's safer. Not until I know I can protect them. Protect you. Kaelin. She cut off his spiraling anxiety. Not yet is fine. I'm not ready either. Too much to do. Too many wolves counting on us. She kissed him softly. But someday, when the world is a little less dangerous, when we've built something worth bringing children into. Someday, he agreed, relief and longing mixing in equal measure. They held each other as the fire burned low, as stars emerged overhead, as the night settled around them like a blanket. In the distance, wolves howled, sentries marking territory, packs communicating across vast distances. The sound was lonely and beautiful and achingly familiar. Varia sent her own howl into the night. Not words, but feeling, defiance, hope, determination. A declaration that she was here, alive, fighting for something that mattered. Kaelin's howl joined hers, harmonizing. Through the bond, their voices intertwined until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. When silence returned, Fenric approached from the darkness. Sorry to interrupt, the beta said, looking genuinely apologetic. But we just received a message from Frostholm. Urgent. Kaelin tensed immediately. What is it? Iskira of House Winterfang has formally withdrawn from the treaty. She declared her territories independent, refusing to implement Omega protections. Fenric's expression was grim. And she's not alone. 3 other houses have joined her. They're calling themselves the Traditional Alliance. Varia's stomach dropped. That's open rebellion. Worse. They've blockaded Borderlands' trade routes under their control. Omegas trying to leave their territories are being detained. Some have been imprisoned for inciting unrest. Fenric handed Kaelin a written report. Your Majesty, this is exactly the coordinated resistance we feared. And it's happening now, while you're far from the capital. Through the bond, Varia felt Kalen's rage building, carefully controlled but burning hot. How many Omegas detained? He asked, his voice deadly calm. At least 40 that we know of. Possibly more. And the other northern houses? 7 remain committed to the treaty. But they're asking for your guidance. Whether to enforce compliance militarily or attempt diplomatic solutions. Kalen stood, his body rigid with fury. Military force against my own houses. That's a civil war. Or it's the law being enforced, Varia said quietly. The treaty isn't optional for participating territories. They ratified it. They're bound by it. And if we go to war, how many will die? How much will we destroy trying to save? Kalen's hands clenched into fists. There has to be another way. There might be. Varius stood beside him. Let me go to Winterfang. Talk to Iskira. Omega to Omega, without armies or threats. See if I can find what's really driving this resistance. Absolutely not. She'd kill you the moment you crossed her borders. Maybe. But she'd also have to explain killing the Alpha King's mate during a diplomatic mission. That's a line even rebellious houses think twice about crossing. Varia took his hands. Kalen, we can't start a civil war without exhausting every other option. Let me try words before we resort to swords. It's too dangerous. Everything we do is dangerous. This is just one more risk in a long line of them. Through the bond, she felt his war with himself, the king who knew she was right, and the mate who wanted to lock her somewhere safe. If I allow this, he said slowly, you're taking Fenric and 20 warriors. You're warded against magical attack. And you maintain constant bond contact, so I know you're alive. Done. And the moment things go wrong, the instant you sense danger, you run. No heroics, no trying to salvage the situation. You get out. Agreed. Varia. His voice broke slightly. I can't lose you. Not after everything. Please don't make me lose you. She pulled him close, feeling his heart race against hers. You won't lose me. I promise. I'm coming back to you. Always. You can't promise that. Watch me. 2 days later, Varia stood at the gates of House Winterfang's stronghold. The fortress was all ice and steel, built into a glacier that never melted. Beautiful and hostile in equal measure. Guards lined the walls, weapons visible, their expressions making clear she wasn't welcome. Fenric stood at her back, 20 warriors arrayed behind them. Through the bond, she felt Kalen's constant presence. He'd remained in the borderlands but maintained their connection, ready to mobilize if needed. Last chance to reconsider, he sent. Not a chance.
We end this now.
The gates opened. Not welcoming, but acknowledgement that they couldn't refuse an audience with the queen. Iskira waited in a throne room carved from ice. She looked like she belonged there, cold, beautiful, utterly unmoved by Varia's arrival. Lady Varia, she said, voice dripping with false courtesy. How unexpected. The king's pet Omega, come to bark at me about treaties I never truly accepted. You ratified the treaty, Varia replied calmly. In front of witnesses. Your signature is binding. Under duress. Political pressure. Threats from your mate. Iskira stood, descending steps carved from glacier ice. That treaty is an abomination. It undermines everything our society is built on: hierarchy, order, strength. You've convinced weak-minded alphas to betray centuries of tradition for your feelings. For basic dignity. There's a difference. Is there? Iskira circled her like a predator. Tell me, do you truly believe Omegas are equal to alphas? That designation doesn't matter? I believe designation determines biology, not worth. Yes. Then you're a fool. And you've made your mate a fool as well. Iskira stopped directly in front of her. But I didn't invite you here for philosophy. I invited you to make an offer. Varia's instincts screamed warning. What offer? Leave. Take your treaty, your bond, your revolution. Go back to the Southern Coalition or wherever you'd like. Just leave the North alone. Iskira's smile was sharp. In exchange, I won't kill you. I won't destroy the few genuine changes you've made. I'll even release the detained Omegas. Everyone gets what they want. Except the Omegas in your territories, who remain oppressed. They're not oppressed. They're protected, guided, given purpose within a system that works. Iskira's voice hardened. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? You're too blinded by your own trauma to see that most Omegas don't want your revolution. They want stability, safety, things your chaos is destroying. You're wrong. Am I? Then why are so many territories struggling with implementation? Why are packs fracturing, Omegas being attacked by other Omegas for betraying their place? Iskira leaned close. Your revolution is eating itself, Lady Varia. And when it collapses, when the 5 kingdoms descend into civil war because you couldn't leave well enough alone, that blood will be on your hands. The words hit like physical blows because there was truth in them. Implementation hasn't been smooth. There had been violence, resistance, Omegas caught between old systems and new promises. But Varia had also seen the other side. Omegas learning to read. Children who wouldn't be sold. Wolves building futures they'd never dared imagine. Change is messy, she said quietly. But necessary change is worth the mess. You're asking me to abandon wolves who finally have hope. I won't do that. Then you've made your choice. Iskira stepped back. And I've made mine. She nodded to her guards. Doors slammed shut. Warriors poured in from hidden passages. Varia's hand went to her blade. You gave your word we could leave safely. I gave my word I wouldn't kill you. I never said anything about letting you leave. Iskira's smile turned cruel. You're now my prisoner, Lady Varia. A bargaining chip. Your mate will withdraw the treaty and military enforcement, or I'll send you back to him piece by piece. Through the bond, Kaelin's fury exploded. Varia felt him mobilize, felt warriors being called, felt his absolute determination to burn Winterfang to the ground if necessary.
Don't, she sent desperately. Don't start a war for me.
You're my mate. I'll start 1,000 wars for you. Kaelin, please. How touching, Iskira said, watching Varia's face. He's coming, isn't he? The mighty king, rushing to save his damsel. She gestured to her guards. Take her to the holding cells. Make her comfortable. She's going to be here for a while. Hands grabbed Varia. Fenric and the warriors fought back, but they were outnumbered. Varia saw 3 of her guards go down, saw Fenric take a blade to the shoulder. Then something sharp pricked her neck. Wolfsbane. Not enough to kill, but enough to weaken. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was Iskira's triumphant smile. The last thing she felt was Kaelin's howl of rage through their bond. Then darkness swallowed her whole. Chapter 13. Varia woke up cold. Not the ordinary cold of northern winters, but the bone-deep cold of ice magic, designed to sap strength and resistance. She was in a cell carved from a glacier, walls gleaming with frost, her breath visible in frigid air. Her hands were bound with spelled chains. She could feel the magic suppressing her wolf, preventing her from shifting or accessing the full strength of her bond with Kaelin. But the bond itself was still there. Muted, strained, but present. Kaelin, she sent. Relief crashed through the connection, so intense it made her gasp. Thank the gods. Are you hurt? Weakened?
Chained.
They used Wolfsbane and ice magic. She tested the bonds, felt them hold firm. Where are you?
2 days away.
Moving as fast as possible. His fury was a living thing, barely controlled. Fenric escaped with most of the warriors. He's guiding us to Winterfang. Don't attack. That's what she wants. Justification for open war. She took my mate. She doesn't get to dictate terms. Kaelin, listen to me. Varia forced herself to think past fear and cold. Iskira said something important. That Omegas are attacking other Omegas for betraying their place. That implementation is causing violence. She was manipulating you. Maybe. But what if there's truth in it? What if some wolves genuinely don't want change? What if we're forcing revolution on people who aren't ready? Then they learn to adapt. His voice was hard. We can't preserve oppression because it's comfortable for some. I know. But we need to understand the resistance, not just crush it. She shivered, the cold seeping deeper. Talk to Iskira when you arrive. Really talk. Find out what she's afraid of. I'm afraid she's going to hurt you while I waste time talking. I'll survive. I always do. Varia. A door opened. Varia cut the connection as Iskira entered, flanked by 2 guards. Comfortable? The Alpha asked, her tone mocking. Lovely accommodations. The ice decor really ties the torture chamber together. Iskira's smile was sharp. I see you haven't lost your spirit.
Good.
Broken mates are less useful as bargaining chips. She gestured, and the guards hauled Varia to her feet.
Come.
We're going to send your mate a message. Show him exactly what defying the traditional alliance costs. Varia's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. If you hurt me, Kalen will destroy you.
Completely.
He won't stop until Winterfong is ash and you're dead. Oh, I'm counting on his rage. Uncontrolled fury makes even kings sloppy. Iskira tilted her head. But I won't damage you. Not yet. First, I want you to see something. They dragged her through ice corridors to a vast chamber. What Varia saw there made her blood run cold. 50 Omegas. Maybe more. All chained, all wearing the marks of abuse, bruises, burns, hollow eyes that spoke of hope extinguished. My collection, Iskira said casually. Every Omega in my territory who dared speak about rights. About change. About your precious treaty. She walked among them like a general reviewing troops. I've been gathering them for months. Waiting for the right moment. You're insane, Varia breathed. I'm practical. These Omegas are leveraged. Your mate withdraws the treaty, they go free. He refuses, she shrugged.
Well,
accidents happen. Especially in these northern climates. Wolves freeze to death all the time. Rage flooded through Varia, so hot it burned away the cold. You think threatening innocent wolves will make Kalen back down? You don't know him at all. I know enough. I know he loves you. I know that love makes him weak. Iskira pulled out a knife, the blade gleaming with more than steel. Poison, Varia realized. Concentrated wolfsbane. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to send him a message through that bond of yours. You're going to tell him to withdraw all support for the treaty, to disband his enforcement, to leave the traditional alliance alone. And if I refuse, then I start with the children. Iskira pointed to a corner where 3 young Omegas huddled together, none older than 10. Poison takes hours to kill. Very painful hours. You'll feel every moment of their suffering through your empathy. Then your mate will feel it through your bond. Her smile turned vicious. Compounding agony. Delicious, really. Varia's mind raced. She couldn't let Iskira hurt those children. But she couldn't betray everything they'd fought for either. Through the bond, she felt Kalen's presence, still distant, but growing closer. Felt his determination, his fury, his love. And suddenly she understood. Iskira was right about one thing. The bond made them vulnerable. But she was wrong about what that vulnerability meant. It wasn't a weakness. It was their greatest weapon.
Fine, Varia said.
I'll send your message. Iskira's eyes narrowed. Just like that? No defiance, no heroic refusal. You're threatening children. I'm not a monster. Varia met her gaze steadily. But I have conditions. Release these Omegas first. All of them. Then I'll contact Kalen. You're hardly in a position to negotiate, aren't I? You need me to send a convincing message. If I'm too angry, too desperate, Kalen will know something's wrong. He'll attack regardless of the consequences. Varia gestured to the imprisoned Omegas. Let them go. Show good faith. Then I'll be calm enough to convince him. Iskira studied her for a long moment.
Fine.
But they don't leave Winterfong. Just these cells. Fair enough. It wasn't fair at all. But it was better than immediate death. Fair enough, Varia agreed. Iskira gave orders. Guards began unlocking chains, herding the Omegas toward the exit. The children clung to each other, terrified but moving. As they passed, Varia caught the eye of one older Omega, a woman with gray hair and knowing eyes. She mouthed 2 words. Be ready. Ready for what? Varia didn't know. But something in the woman's expression said she wasn't as broken as she appeared. When the Omegas were gone, Iskira turned back to Varia.
Now,
Send your message. And remember, if I sense any deception, any attempt to warn him, those children die slowly. Varia closed her eyes and opened the bond fully. Kalen's presence flooded in, warm and fierce. Varia, what's happening? Listen carefully. Don't react. Don't let her know what I'm telling you. What? She has 50 Omegas imprisoned, threatening to kill them if you don't withdraw the treaty. She thinks she's using our bond against us. Varia took a slow breath. But bonds work both ways, don't they? Understanding rippled through the connection. You want to use the bond to coordinate an attack. She's suppressing my wolf with ice magic and spelled chains. But she can't suppress our connection, which means I can feed you power through the bond. Amplify your strength despite the suppression. She felt his fierce approval. How much time do I have? I'm supposed to convince you to surrender. I can probably stall for a few hours before she realizes I'm lying. We're 6 hours out. That's too long. Then I'll stall for 6 hours. Varia, if she realizes what you're doing. She won't. I'm a very convincing liar when necessary. Varia opened her eyes, making her expression defeated. I love you, and I'm trusting you to finish what we started. I love you too.
hold on.
I'm coming. The bond connection shifted to background, still present, but hidden beneath surface thoughts. Well, Iskira demanded. Varia let her shoulders slump, let tears fill her eyes. He's furious. Says he's going to kill you. And I told him it's not worth it. That no treaty is worth watching children die. Varia's voice broke convincingly. He's considering it. But he needs time. He wants proof we're alive, unharmed. I want to negotiate terms. How much time?
A day.
Maybe 2. He's 2 days away, said he needs to consult with the coalition with the northern houses who still support him. Varia met Iskira's gaze. But he'll withdraw. Eventually. He loves me too much not to. Iskira studied her for a long moment. You're telling the truth. I can see it. Because I am telling the truth. Just not all of it. Good. Iskira gestured to the guards. Return her to the cell. No food, minimal water. Let discomfort soften her further. In 2 days, we'll reconvene and finish this negotiation. They dragged Varia back to her ice cell, chained her to the wall. When the door closed, leaving her in darkness and cold, she finally allowed herself to smile. Iskira thought she'd won. Thought she'd found the perfect leverage. But she'd made a critical mistake. She'd given Varia time. And time was exactly what Kalen needed to arrive with an army. Through the bond, Varia felt him moving, felt strategies forming, felt loyal warriors rallying to their king's call. 6 hours later, she reminded him, I'll be there in 4. Show off. His mental laugh was grim. I'm bringing Thessa and Calyx. The Bondweaver can break ice magic. Calyx knows Winterfang's layout. Her sister Lisette was imprisoned here decades ago. We'll get you out. And the other Omegas? All of them. We're not leaving anyone behind. Varia closed her eyes, drawing warmth from the bond, from Kalen's presence. The cold was seeping deeper, the ice magic sapping her strength. But she'd survived worse. And in 4 hours, Winterfang was going to learn exactly what happened when you threatened a bonded queen. Time crawled in the ice cell. Varia focused on the bond, on staying warm through sheer force of will and Kalen's steady presence. She felt him getting closer and felt the moment he crossed into Winterfang territory. Felt the exact instant Iskira's forces detected the approaching army. Above, alarms sounded, running footsteps, shouted orders. The door burst open. Iskira stormed in, fury radiating from every pore. You lied, she snarled. Your mate isn't negotiating. He's attacking with half the northern forces at his back. I didn't lie. I said he was considering withdrawal. I never said he'd actually do it. Varia smiled through chattering teeth. You assumed love made him weak. But all it did was make him absolutely certain he'd burn your stronghold to ash before leaving me here. Iskira's hand cracked across Varia's face, the blow vicious enough to split her lip. Through the bond, she felt Kaelin's answering rage, and felt him move even faster. It doesn't matter, Iskira said, breathing hard. I still have you. I still have the other Omegas. He'll have to negotiate once he realizes. An explosion rocked the stronghold. Then another. Magic flared, Thessa's power, breaking through ice wards like they were paper. He's not here to negotiate, Varia said softly. He's here to end you. Iskira's expression shifted to something almost like fear, then hardened to determination.
Fine.
If I can't win, I'll make sure you lose too. She raised the poison blade, the same one she'd threatened the children with. Varia braced herself. But before the blade could fall, the cell door exploded inward. Kaelin stood in the opening, wolf form massive and terrifying, silver eyes blazing with fury. He shifted mid-leap, his human form tackling Iskira to the ground before she could strike. They fought with brutal efficiency, but Kaelin was rage personified. Within seconds, he had Iskira pinned, his hand around her throat. Give me one reason, he snarled, not to kill you right now. Because I'm not alone, Iskira gasped. Kill me, and the traditional alliance retaliates. You'll have a civil war. Everything you've built collapses. Kaelin's grip tightened. Through the bond, Varia felt him warring with himself, the king who knew she was right, and the mate who wanted her dead for threatening Varia. Kaelin, Varia said hoarsely. Don't. She's not worth it. His silver eyes found hers. She tried to kill you.
She failed.
I'm alive. And if you kill her, you prove her right, that the treaty is just tyranny wearing a different crown. Varia.
Please. For me.
Be better than her. The plea broke through his rage. Slowly, reluctantly, he released Iskira's throat. You're under arrest, he said coldly, for kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy against the crown. Your territories are forfeit. Your house dissolved. He stood, pulling Varia into his arms. And if you ever threaten my mate again, politics be damned, I'll kill you myself. Fenric appeared with warriors, taking Iskira into custody. Thessa entered, her magic breaking the spelled chains binding Varia. The moment she was free, Kaelin crushed her against him, his whole body shaking. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered against her hair. When you stopped responding through the bond, when I felt the pain of that blow. I'm here. I'm alive. Varia clung to him just as tightly. The other Omegas. Being freed as we speak. All of them. Safe. He pulled back just enough to check her for injuries, his hands gentle despite their trembling. Gods, you're frozen. How long were you in this cell? 4 hours. Maybe 5. Lost track. Now that safety had arrived, exhaustion crashed over her. Did we win? You won. You stalled long enough for us to mobilize. You kept the Omegas alive. You stopped me from doing something we'd both regret. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You're magnificent and terrifying, and I'm never letting you out of my sight again. That'll make certain activities awkward. Despite everything, he laughed, broken and relieved. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm, somewhere safe, somewhere that isn't a goddamned ice prison. He lifted her easily, carrying her from the cell, through corridors now filled with his warriors, past surrendering Winterfang guards. As they emerged into winter sunlight, Varia saw the freed Omegas, all 50, plus the children, being tended by healers, wrapped in warm blankets, alive. The older woman she'd noticed before caught her eye and bowed. A gesture of respect, of acknowledgement, of alliance. Be ready, she'd said. And Varia had been. They all had been. Change was messy, painful, dangerous. But as Kaelin carried her towards safety, surrounded by wolves they'd saved and warriors who'd fought for something bigger than territory or power, Varia knew it was working. They were winning. Slowly. One battle at a time. And together, bonded and unbreakable, they'd see it through to the end. Chapter 14. The trial of Iskira of House Winterfong took place 1 month later, in the Great Hall of Frostholm. Varia had recovered from her imprisonment, physically, at least. The emotional scars ran deeper, manifesting in nightmares where she was still trapped in ice, still unable to reach Kaelin through a bond that stretched too thin. But she was healing. They both were. Now she sat in the gallery beside the other Omegas who'd been imprisoned, watching as justice finally came for their tormentor. Iskira stood in chains before the assembled houses, her proud bearing diminished but not broken. The charges were read: kidnapping, conspiracy, treaty violations, attempted murder, false imprisonment, and more. The evidence was overwhelming. Testimony from freed Omegas. Documents proving she'd been coordinating with other traditional alliance members. Plans for further resistance, including assassination attempts on coalition delegates. How do you answer these charges? Lorcan, serving as judge, asked. I don't deny them, Iskira said, her voice carrying across the silent hall. I did everything alleged. I imprisoned Omegas. I kidnapped the queen. I conspired against the treaty. She lifted her chin. And I do it again. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Because the treaty is destroying everything we've built, Iskira continued. It's not about Omega rights. It's about dismantling the pack structure that's kept us safe for centuries. You've all seen it. Territories fracturing. Omegas abandoning their roles. Traditional alliances are crumbling. Her eyes found Kaelin. Your Majesty, I know you believe you're building something better, but all you're building is chaos. You're wrong, Varia said, standing. She hadn't planned to speak, but the words came anyway. The chaos existed before. You just couldn't see it because it wasn't affecting you. Iskira's gaze swung to her. And what would you know about it? You're an outsider. A single Omega whose trauma convinced a king to upend an entire society. I know that 50 Omegas in your territories alone were desperate enough to risk everything speaking about rights. That children are learning to read instead of being sold. That wolves across the 5 kingdoms are building futures they couldn't imagine before. Varia's voice strengthened. Yes, it's messy. Yes, some wolves are struggling with change. But struggling toward freedom is better than comfortable oppression. Comfortable oppression, Iskira repeated bitterly. You make it sound like we were monsters, but we protected our Omegas. Fed them, housed them, gave them purpose. You controlled them. There's a difference. An Omega from the freed prisoners stood. The gray-haired woman Varia remembered. I'm Liswyn. I spent 30 years in House Winterfong. 30 years being told my worth was determined by how well I served. When I spoke about wanting more, wanting choice, your enforcers beat me until I learned silence. Her voice was steady, damning. That's not protection, Alpha Iskira. That's prison with prettier words. One by one, other freed Omegas stood, adding their voices. Not with rage, but with calm testimony that was somehow more devastating. The hall listened. Even alphas who'd initially opposed the treaty looked uncomfortable as the stories accumulated. Abuse masked as discipline, control framed as guidance, oppression called tradition. When the testimonies ended, Lorcan spoke. Alpha Iskira, you've been found guilty on all charges. The sentence for such crimes is traditionally execution. However, he glanced at Kaelin. His Majesty has requested the opportunity to speak before sentencing is finalized. Kaelin stood, and the hall fell silent. Varia felt his conflict through the bond. Justice versus mercy, the king's duty versus the person he was trying to become. Execution would be easy, Kaelin said.
Clean.
Final. It would send a message that treaty violations won't be tolerated. He paused. But it would also prove Alpha Iskira's point, that this is tyranny, just wearing a different crown. He descended from his seat, walking to stand before Iskira. You believe the treaty is destroying our society. I believe it's saving it from rotting from within. We may never agree on that. His voice was measured. But you raised one valid concern. Implementation has been chaotic. Some territories are struggling. Some Omegas are caught between systems. unsure how to navigate new freedoms. And your solution? Iskira asked bitterly. You help fix it. Shock rippled through the hall. Varia felt her own surprise echo through the bond. Your sentence is this, Kaelin continued. 20 years of service. You'll travel to every territory struggling with implementation. You'll work directly with Omegas and Alphas to find solutions that honor the treaty's spirit while acknowledging practical challenges. You'll use your experience, your understanding of traditional structures, to help bridge old and new. You want me to enforce the very treaty I opposed? I want you to help make it work. Because you are right about one thing. We can't just tear down centuries of structure without helping wolves build something new. Kaelin's expression was hard. But if you continue to oppose change rather than help shape it, then yes, execution. Your choice. Iskira stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. You're either brilliant or insane. Possibly both. She met his gaze. You're trusting your enemy to help implement the very policy she tried to destroy? I'm giving my enemy the chance to become something else.
An ally.
A bridge. Someone who helps rather than hinders. Kaelin's voice dropped. 20 years, Iskira. Help us make this work, and at the end, you'll have the satisfaction of proving your concerns were addressed. That we listened. That this wasn't tyranny, it was evolution. Another long silence. Then Iskira bowed her head. Not submission, but acknowledgement. 20 years, she said quietly. I accept. The hall erupted in discussion, some approving, some outraged. Varia felt the political genius of it through her bond with Kaelin. By turning Iskira into a partner rather than a martyr, he'd neutralized the traditional alliance's most compelling argument. And he'd open a path for other opponents to come to the table rather than dig in deeper. Later, in their private chambers, Varia confronted him. That was risky. What if she uses her position to sabotage things? Then we deal with it. But Varia, she made some valid points. Implementation has been rough. We've been so focused on rights that we haven't always helped wolves navigate the transition. Kaelin pulled her close. Having someone who understands traditional structures, who can speak to resistant alphas in their language, that's valuable. Or dangerous. Both. Always both. He kissed her forehead. But I'm tired of making enemies when I could make reluctant allies. And I think, deep down, Iskira cares about pack stability. She just disagrees about how to achieve it. You're giving her a lot of credit. I'm giving her a chance. Same as I gave you. His smile was slight. You were supposed to be a political tool, proof that I cared about Omegas. Instead, you became my partner, my mate, the person who challenges me to be better. Who's to say Iskira can't surprise us too? Varia leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of their bond. When did you get so optimistic? Around that time I met an Omega who refused to give up even when death seemed easier. She taught me that change is possible. His arms tightened around her. She also nearly gave me a heart attack by getting kidnapped, but I'm trying to forgive her for that. I told you to wait. You're the one who rushed in with an army. You were in danger. What else was I supposed to do? Trust that I could handle it? I do trust you. I just also trust my need to protect you more. He pulled back to meet her eyes. We're bonded, Varia. Your pain is my pain. Asking me not to rescue you is like asking me not to breathe. She understood. Through the bond, she felt the same protective instinct toward him. Fierce, irrational, overwhelming. Then we protect each other, she said.
Equally.
No more sacrificing yourself for me. No more throwing yourself into danger alone. Agreed. Liar. You'll do it again the moment you think I'm threatened. Probably. His grin was unrepentant. But so will you. So I guess we're both terrible at self-preservation. Good thing we have each other. Very good thing. They stood in comfortable silence, watching moonlight paint silver across the mountains visible through their window. Outside, frost homes settled into night, guards changing shifts, fires being banked, wolves finding their dens.
Peace.
Hard-won and fragile, but real. 6 more months of territorial visits, Kaelin said. Then we can finally return home. Really return, not just pass through between crises. And do what? We've spent almost a year in constant motion. Fighting, implementing, surviving. Varia turned to look at him. What do bonded mates do when they're not saving kingdoms? I don't know. I've never gotten that far before. His expression turned thoughtful. Build something? Not just politically, personally. A life that's ours, not just a series of battles and victories. Children? Varia asked quietly. Eventually, if you still want them. I do. Someday. She placed her hand on her stomach, imagining. When the world is a little safer. When we can bring them into something stable. Then we make it stable. Kaelin's hand covered hers. However long it takes. Whatever it costs. We build a world worthy of them. A knock interrupted the moment. Fenric's voice. Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion. But there's news from the borderlands. Urgent. Kaelin sighed. So much for peace. They opened the door to find Fenric looking grim. What is it? The Southern Coalition has discovered something. Evidence that the divided kingdom wasn't just operating in the north. Fenric handed them a document. They've been active in coalition territories too. Quietly sabotaging, sowing discord, preparing for something larger. Varia scanned the document, her blood running cold. These dates, this has been going on for years. Long before the Silver Pine attack. Which means everything we've been dealing with, the assassination attempts, the rogue raids, the resistance to the treaty, all of it was orchestrated. Pieces of a much larger plan. Fenric's expression was grave. Your Majesty, we haven't been fighting scattered enemies. We've been fighting the opening moves of a war that's still coming. Kaelin's jaw clenched. Through the bond, Varia felt his determination crystallize. Then we prepare, he said. We consolidate our gains, strengthen our alliances, and get ready for whatever they're planning. He looked at Varia. Together. Always together, she agreed. But as Fenric left and they returned to the silence of their chambers, Varia couldn't shake the feeling that something larger was stirring. Something that made all their previous battles seem like practice for the real war ahead. In the shadows of the 5 kingdoms, enemies were moving. Planning. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when they did, everything Varia and Kaelin had built would be tested to its breaking point. But tonight, they had each other, their bond, and the strength they'd forged through fire and ice and blood. Whatever came next, they'd face it the way they'd faced everything else. Together. Unbroken. Ready. The fight for the 5 kingdoms was far from over. But neither were they. Chapter 15. 6 months later, Varia stood at the edge of the northern wastes, looking out over lands transformed. They'd done it. Every territory visited, every implementation challenge addressed, every resistant alpha either brought to the table or removed from power. The treaty wasn't just words on paper anymore. It was living, breathing reality. Omegas across the 5 kingdoms had rights. Protection. Futures. It had cost them sleepless nights, constant danger, relationships strained to breaking. But they'd survived. Tired? Kaelin asked, joining her at the overlook. Exhausted. Relieved. Terrified. We'll wake up and find it was all temporary. Varia leaned against him. How do we know it'll last? We don't. But we built something strong enough to outlive us. That's all anyone can do. His arm wrapped around her waist. Ready to go home? Home. The word still felt strange, wonderful. They'd been traveling for so long that Frostholm had become more a concept than a place. Somewhere they'd return to eventually, someday, when the work was done. Yes, Varia said. I'm ready. The journey back took 3 days. When Frostholm's towers finally appeared on the horizon, Varia felt something loosen in her chest. A tension she'd been carrying for months, maybe longer. They were home. Finally, truly home. The palace staff greeted them with genuine warmth, no longer just tolerating the Omega Queen, but welcoming her. Calyx met them at the entrance, her glacial eyes showing rare emotion. Welcome back. You both look terrible. We've been sleeping in tents for half a year. Terrible is generous. Kalen handed his travel pack to a servant. Did anything catastrophic happen while we were gone? 3 minor disputes, 2 attempted trade negotiations, and 1 incident where a visiting alpha tried to bribe me into supporting his proposal to limit Omega representation in pack councils. Calix's smile was sharp. I had him escorted out. Quite forcefully. I knew I kept you around for a reason. Kalen turned to Varia. I need to review what I've missed. Meet me for dinner? I'll be in the library. Apparently, I have correspondence from about 50 different packs. Varia grimaced. Being queen involves more paperwork than I anticipated. Wait until you see the budget proposals. You'll long for simple assassination attempts. Despite the exhaustion, Varia laughed. They parted ways, Kalen to his study, Varia to the library where Sage was waiting with a massive stack of letters. You're back. Her friend crashed into her with a hug that nearly knocked them both over. I missed you so much. Letters aren't the same as having you here. Missed you too. Varia squeezed tight, grateful for the anchor of friendship that had survived everything. How have you been?
Busy. Good busy.
I've been working with the Omega Council. Yes, we formed an official council while you were gone, coordinating implementation support across territories. Sage's eyes shone with pride. Varia, it's working. Really working. We have Omegas in leadership positions now. Not just tokens, actual power. That's incredible. It's because of you. Because you showed everyone what was possible. Sage pulled back, studying her. But you look exhausted. When's the last time you actually rested? Define rest. Sleeping more than 4 hours. Eating full meals. Not constantly looking over your shoulder for assassins. Then I genuinely can't remember. Varia sank into a chair, suddenly feeling the weight of every mile traveled, every battle fought, every night spent sleeping on frozen ground. Is it always going to be like this? Constant crisis, constant motion. Maybe for a while. But Varia, you've changed the 5 kingdoms in less than a year. You're allowed to rest now. Sage squeezed her hand. Let others carry some of the weight. You've done enough. Had she? The question haunted Varia as she reviewed correspondence, as she met with the Omega Council, as she navigated the endless small crises that apparently constituted normal governance. By the time dinner arrived, she was ready to collapse. Kalen found her in their chambers, staring at reports she could no longer focus on. Come on, he said gently. Food first. Paperwork can wait. It's always waiting. That's the problem. There's always one more crisis, one more letter, one more. Varia. He took the papers from her hands. It can wait. You can't. He led her to a private dining room where a simple meal was laid out. Nothing formal or ceremonial, just food and quiet. They ate in comfortable silence, the bond humming between them with exhaustion and relief and love. Calix suggested something. Kalen said eventually. She thinks we should take time. Actually time, not just a few days between crises. A month, maybe 2, where we're not governing or implementing or saving anyone. We can't just abandon. We're not abandoning anything. We're trusting the systems we've built to function without constant supervision. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Varia, we've been in crisis mode for a year. We need to rest, to heal, to remember why we're doing this. And if something goes wrong, then Calix and Fenric and the Omega Council and the Northern Houses handle it. We've built a network. Time to trust it. Varia wanted to argue, but exhaustion made her honest. I don't know how to stop. Every time I think about resting, I remember wolves still suffering, territories still struggling, enemies still plotting. I know. I feel it too. Kalen's thumb brushed over her knuckles. But we can't save anyone if we burn out completely. And we're getting close, Varia. I can feel it through the bond. You're running on nothing but willpower and stubbornness. That's kept me alive this long. And it'll kill you eventually if you don't learn to rest. His voice was gentle.
Please. For me.
Take a month. Let's just be mates instead of revolutionaries.
See what that feels like.
The pleading in his eyes, the concern pouring through their bond, broke through her resistance. "Okay," she whispered. "1 month. But if anything catastrophic happens, we'll handle it. Together. Like always." He stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "Now come to bed. Real bed, not a bedroll on frozen ground. Sleep until you can't sleep anymore." They made it to their chambers, to the massive bed that suddenly felt like the greatest luxury in the world. Varia was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She dreamed of Silverpine, not burning this time, but rebuilt. Children playing in streets, families laughing, wolves living free. And in the center of it all, a massive oak tree covered in green leaves and wildflowers, exactly as she'd planted months ago. Hope growing from ash. The month passed like a dream. Varia slept. I actually slept, sometimes for 12 hours straight. She read books that weren't political treatises. Walked through Frostholm's gardens without constantly scanning for threats. Spent long evenings with Kaelin doing absolutely nothing important. Talking, laughing, simply existing together. It was strange. Uncomfortable at first. But slowly something settled. The constant tension that had lived in her chest for a year began to ease. She started to remember who she'd been before everything. Not the broken Omega from Silverpine, not the revolutionary queen, but something in between. Herself, with all the complexity that entailed. Kaelin transformed too. Without the weight of constant crisis, he smiled more.
Laughed.
Let himself be vulnerable in ways he'd never allowed before. One evening, 3 weeks into their rest, they lay tangled together in bed, the bond humming with contentment. "I want to show you something," Kaelin said. "Tomorrow. If you're feeling up to it." "Show me what?" "A surprise. But it requires travel. Just a day's ride." Various studied him through the bond, feeling excitement and nervousness mixing. "What are you planning?" "Trust me." "Always." The next morning, they rode out with minimal guard, just Fenric and 2 warriors. They traveled south, into forests Varia didn't recognize, following paths that seemed deliberately hidden. After 6 hours, they emerged into a clearing. Varia's breath caught. A house stood there, not massive, not palatial, but perfect. Stone and wood, built into the hillside, with windows that caught sunlight and a garden already planted. Smoke rose from the chimney, suggesting someone had prepared it for their arrival. "What is this?" Varia breathed.
"Ours.
"If you want it." Kaelin dismounted, helping her down. "I had it built while we were traveling. Somewhere private. Somewhere we could come when palace life gets overwhelming. Somewhere to just be." He led her inside. The house was beautiful, warm, comfortable, filled with small touches that showed he'd thought of everything. Books she loved. Colors she preferred. A massive bed facing windows that overlooked the forest. Kaelin, tears pricked her eyes. "This is too much. It's not enough. But it's a start." He pulled her close. "I want to build a life with you, Varia. Not just survive crises or fight enemies. Actually live. Have mornings where the biggest decision is what to have for breakfast. Evenings where we watch sunsets instead of reviewing battle plans. We're rulers. We have responsibilities. And we'll meet them. But not every hour of every day. Sometimes we're allowed to be just us." His hands framed her face. "So this house is for that. For when we need to remember why we're fighting so hard to change the world." Varia kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into the connection, gratitude, love, the overwhelming relief of being seen so completely. They spent 3 days in the house, exploring the forest, cooking simple meals, making love without urgency or fear. Building a life in miniature, a preview of what they were fighting for. On the 3rd evening, lying in bed watching stars through the window, Kaelin spoke quietly. "I want children. I really want them. Not someday, soon. As soon as you're ready." Varia's heart stuttered. "Kaelin, I know it's dangerous. I know bringing children into this world, with enemies still circling, is a risk." His hand found hers in the darkness. But we've built something strong. Systems that work. Allies we trust. And I hope, we've made it safe enough to try. Safe enough to try isn't the same as safe. Nothing's ever completely safe. But Varia, I want to raise children who grow up in the world we're creating. Who see omegas as equals, who understand strength comes in many forms, who know love is worth fighting for. His voice roughened. I want to raise them with you. Varia thought about it. About bringing life into a world still scarred by conflict, still healing from centuries of harm. About the danger, the responsibility, the terrifying vulnerability of loving something completely. And she thought about those wildflowers she'd planted at Silverpine. About hope growing from ash. About building futures instead of just surviving presents. Okay, she whispered.
Soon. Not today, but soon.
Let's finish the rest of our territorial visits. Make sure everything's stable. Then, she squeezed his hand. Then, let's start our family. Through the bond, his joy blazed like sunlight. He kissed her, gentle and reverent and full of promise. Thank you, he breathed, for choosing this, for choosing us. There was never any other choice. They returned to Frostholm 2 days later, refreshed and ready to face whatever came next. What came next was Fenric, looking grim. Your Majesty, we've received word from our scouts. The divided kingdom, they're moving. Consolidating forces in the eastern wastes. Building something. Building what? Kaelin demanded. We don't know yet, but it's large. Coordinated. And every piece of intelligence suggests they're preparing for a major operation. Fenric's expression was grave. Whatever they're planning, it's coming soon. Within months, maybe weeks. Varia felt the peace of their month together shatter. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Determination. They'd known this was coming. I had prepared for it. Then we prepare too, she said firmly. Call the allied houses. Contact the Southern Coalition. If the divided kingdom wants war, we'll give them one they can't win. Kaelin's hand found hers, their bond thrumming with shared resolve. Together, he asked. Always together, Varia replied. The final battle was coming. Everything they'd built would be tested. But they were ready, bonded, strengthened by love and purpose, supported by allies they'd forged through fire and ice. Whatever the divided kingdom had planned, they would face it, and they would win, because some things were worth fighting for. And the future they'd begun to build, a world where all wolves mattered, where love transcended designation, where hope could grow from even the deepest ash, was worth everything. The end. If this story moved you, if Varia and Kaelin's journey spoke to something in your soul, then subscribe. Because stories of wolves who refuse to give up, who fight for love and justice and the freedom to choose their own destiny, these stories matter. And they deserve an audience who truly cares. Drop a comment. What moment in this story hit you hardest? Was it Varia telling that rogue to end her, Kaelin's confession in the tunnels, the summit speech, or something else? Share your thoughts. Let's talk about stories that dare to imagine better worlds. And hit that like button if you believe love is the most revolutionary force there is. Because Varia and Kaelin proved it, not through perfect victories, but through choosing each other, again and again, in the face of impossible odds. Until the next story, keep howling at the moon and believing in second chances. Because sometimes, one mistake, one impossible moment, one text sent to the wrong number, is exactly what changes everything. This has been Wild Alpha Tales, where love roars louder than fear, and hope always finds a way to grow.